Faites l'appel, s'il vous plaît, Madame le greffier.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier.
Présent.
Madame le connétable de Saint-Laurent.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Brelade.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de la Trinité.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Madame le connétable de Saint-Martin. Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Clément.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Gouville.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Sainte-Bonne.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Sauveur.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Southern. Madame le député Labbé. Monsieur le député Tadier.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Luce.
Présent.
Madame le député Dublé. Monsieur le député Morel.
Présent.
Madame le député Lehegara. Monsieur le député Ayer.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Alice.
Présente.
Madame le député Gardner.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Gorse.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Farnham.
Présent.
Madame le député Moore.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Mezek.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Osef.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Balash.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Coles.
Présent.
Madame le député Poré.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Miles.
Présente.
Madame le député Scott.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Renouf.
Présent.
Madame le député Curtis. Madame le député Feltham. Madame le député Binet. Madame le député Jeune. Madame le député Miller.
Présent.
Madame le député Howell. Monsieur le député Binet. Monsieur le député Ferry.
Présent.
Madame le député Kovac.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Curtis.
Présent.
Madame le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Wilson.
Présente.
Madame le député Stevenson.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Andrews.
Monsieur le doyen.
Notre aide soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait les cieux et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a établi le gouvernement et les puissances de la terre pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, et qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but le gloire de ton saint nom. Nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don de conseil et de prudence, d'unir les cœurs et les affections de tous ceux qui la composent, de la conduire tellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit, que toute leur délibération est accompagnée de ta bénédiction. Réussisse au bien-être et au soulagement du peuple, qu'il te plut de commettre à leurs soins. Car nous t'en prions, au nom et par le mérite de ton Fils bien-aimé Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné de t'invoquer en disant: Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite sur la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonnons nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous amène pas en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal. Car à toi, le règne, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen.
Monsieur le député Southern.
Présent.
Madame le député Blabbé. Madame la Deputy Doublé.
Deputy Double is away for States Business at Commonwealth's Women Parliamentarian Workshop in Edinburgh.
Way on States Business.
Madame la Deputy Lehegaran.
They're not working. So,
They are and they aren't. You're coming up as the names of the children from the debate yesterday. So, Deputy Kovacs, you came up as a young man called Rufus, and Deputy Scott, you came up as Izzy, and so on.
well, I was going to say Deputy Lehegar is also away on CWP business, so it's States Business.
Yes, way on States Business.
These aren't working.
Sorry.
Yes.
I'll wait until the states is constituted.
Yes, I think you should, yes. Yes, there are still some more members to account for.
Madame la Deputy Feltham.
Présente.
Madame la Deputy Jeune.
So,
Sorry, Deputy John is also at the same conference.
Way on States Business.
Madame la Deputy Howell.
Présente.
Les états sont constitués. Chief Minister, did you want to say something?
Yes, sir. I just it's clear that the microphones are not working in the assembly, which suits me because it means we can't take questions, of course. But I think it's not really possible for the assembly to function until the problem is fixed, sir. So just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Well, I think it is now
It's
fixed.
sir. Thank you.
Yes.
Could they turn the heating on as well, please?
We'll see about that. On behalf of members, I would like to welcome His Excellency to the Chamber this morning. Turning to the order paper, there are a number of subordinate enactments under B. A number of documents have been presented or laid under C, and the following propositions have been lodged under D. Reinstatement of senators, P2 amendment lodged on the 4th of March by Deputy Coles. A reinstatement of senators amendment lodged on the 10th of March by Deputy Moore. Reinstatement of senators' second amendment lodged on the 5th of March by Deputy Mesick. Reinstatement of senators' third amendment lodged on the 6th of March by the Privileges and Procedures Committee. Reinstatement of senators' fourth amendment lodged on the 10th of March by Deputy Moore. Reinstatement of senators' fifth amendment lodged on the 11th of March by Deputy Tadier. A National Day for Jersey amendment lodged on the 12th of March by Deputy Tadier. Evidence-Based Energy Strategy amendment lodged on the 10th of March by Deputy Ozef. Evidence-Based Energy Strategy second amendment lodged on the 11th of March by the Minister for the Environment. Draft Elections Appointed Day, Jersey Act, lodged on the 27th of February by the Privileges and Procedures Committee. Jersey Overseas Aid Commission reappointment of non-states commissioner lodged on the 3rd of March by the Minister for International Development. Draft Single-Use Plastics Restrictions Jersey Amendment Number 2 law lodged on the 4th of March by the Minister for Infrastructure. Extension of eligibility criteria for election candidates lodged on the 11th of March by Deputy Alves. Regulation of the professional practice of therapeutic counsellors lodged on the 11th of March by Deputy Coles. Draft Jersey Gas Company Amendment Law lodged on the 11th of March by the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs. Under E, in accordance with Standing Order 34.1, the proposer of the following proposition lodged au greffe has informed the greffier that it is to be withdrawn. P86, selection of elected member to preside at states meetings, lodged on the 5th of December by Deputy Gorse. There is nothing under F, G, H. Yes, there is. There's something under F. There is a nomination by Deputy Gardner of the Public Accounts Committee for the appointment of an unelected member of the committee. It's a requirement under Standing Order 124 that at least 14 days before the meeting during which the unelected member is to be appointed, notice be given to the greffier of the intended nominee and the nomination distributed to members. Those requirements have been met. In accordance with Standing Order 1244, I invite Deputy Gardner to make her nomination. Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. And I would like to appoint Mr. Ali Awan. He is a qualified chartered accountant with strong background in financial oversight, risk management, regulatory compliance and governance, and he brings valuable expertise to his role as a lay member to the Public Accounts Committee, and I would like to ask Assembly to appoint Mr. Ali Awan as a lay member to the Public Accounts Committee.
Thank you, Deputy. Is the nomination seconded?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Understanding R 1242, nominations from other members may be considered, but notice of such nominations must be given to the greffier at least 2 working days before the meeting. No other nominations were received. I therefore declare Mr. Ali Awan has been appointed as a member of the Public Accounts Committee. There are no matters of privilege or petitions. There are a number of written questions to which answers have been provided. And we now turn to the oral. Yes, Deputy Alex Curtis.
So could I, under written questions, request a ruling by you over lunch on the response to written question 110, part E? I don't believe that the answer given is sufficient or a valid answer. This is the question titled written question to the Minister for Environment on Maison les Arches, and the answer given is there's not been sufficient time to answer the question. I would like to contest otherwise, that there was sufficient time. I've prepared an email to send to you to review in your ruling, sir, if you would be happy to do
You
so.
send me an email, I'll reply within the time set out in standing orders. And that's written question 110E in particular. Thank you very much. Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. Just before I ask my first oral question, I just asked the leave of the Assembly. My second, I have to attend a brief medical appointment in the middle of the morning, so I have to leave the Assembly about 11. I should be back within about 45 minutes. However, I think my second question might fall during that time, and therefore I'd ask that it was put at the end of the questions.
Yes,
if we get to
content
them.
with that. Everyone's content with that question to get at the end. Yes, thank you very much. So we now turn to oral questions, of which there are many today, and I invite Deputy Moore to put the first question to the Minister for the Environment. Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise what progress is being made towards the introduction of a reverse osmosis system to treat water and remove PFAS and nitrates?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I'm committed to ensuring the safety and quality of our water supply and protecting public health, and that's why I've asked the independent PFAS scientific panel to prioritise water regulation and treatment options as the first phase of Report 4. At a meeting that will be held in public of the panel on the 30th of April, there will be a focus on presentations from Jersey Water on its progress on water treatment options. Water treatment experts will also give evidence on current and emerging treatment options at this meeting, helping to understand what treatment solution would work best in Jersey. I anticipate an interim report from the panel in the summer, which will allow me to recommend a more stringent regulatory standard for PFAS levels in mains water and to inform the treatment solutions adopted by Jersey Water to achieve this new standard. Standards, treatment and water management methods are already in place to manage nitrate levels, but it may well be the case that a solution for treating PFAS will also benefit water quality as a whole. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. I'm grateful to the Minister for his answer. In relation to his comment regarding nitrates, how does he believe his continuing derogation on the level of nitrates in public water balances with his commitment to assuring the best possible quality?
Minister.
Sir, it was quite recently that I was asked to grant or otherwise a derogation for nitrates in water. The Deputy will know that it's some 10 years now since we started the action. What was then a nitrate working group with the farming industry, it's now called the Action for Cleaner Water Group, and which has had great success over the years in reducing nitrate levels. I'm not aware that we have had any incidents of nitrates above levels for many, many years now, but Jersey Water still applied to me for this derogation, the last, I believe, that they will ever apply for. I was happy to grant it on the basis that for a number of years we haven't got anywhere near the nitrate levels, and it's there very much just as a backstop.
Thank you. Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. Follow the Minister's answer about introduction of stricter regulations in Jersey. Would the Minister advise where we are currently, Jersey as a jurisdiction, compared to other WOA jurisdictions for the PFAS regulation, if you're thinking about Europe, UK, and others?
Minister.
So Jersey currently has a level which is the same. I believe we meet EU levels, and the guidance also in the UK, we take that into account, and Jersey Water levels for PFAS in water is below those consistently. If one looks around the globe, I believe there are varying levels of acceptable PFAS levels in water. But the job of the independent panel is to review all those levels to see where other countries around the globe are, and to report back in the summer as to where they consider a new satisfactory level should be and how we might get there.
Supplementary.
Thank you. And would the Minister advise when he is expecting to introduction of these new regulations follow the summer report if it will be needed?
Minister.
So it's my expectation, as I've said, to receive this report from the panel in the summer about water. I will then need time to consider where any new regulatory level may be set. And then, of course, I will have the most important thing, I will have to speak to Jersey Water about how quickly we can achieve that new level. The Deputy needs to know that in the UK, for example, it would be normal to give a region of 5 or 6 years lead in time. The new infrastructure that will be needed to achieve these levels is not something that's going to be built in 6 months. It's going to be a considerable piece of development, and we will need to consider very carefully where that goes and how it's built.
Deputy Tadia.
Does the Minister know whether a derogation that has been asked for has ever been refused by himself or by previous ministers? And if not, what other disincentives are there for a water company to regulate its behaviour if no such derogations have ever been denied?
Minister.
So I'm not aware that a derogation has ever been refused, but it may well have been in the past that a good warning was given that no derogations would be further issued for some particular thing. I can't think what it would be. But I believe that the derogation's there just to allow the company to very, very, very occasionally, should it need to exceed by some small amount or by accident an exceedance. I'm not sure what the penalties would be of going over the limit if there's no derogation in place.
Supplementary.
I do have a supplement. I mean, a derogation can be asked for, but it doesn't have to be granted. I think that's the point that is coming out. So, is the Minister prepared more widely, whether it's to do with PFAS, it was the original question, for compensation to be given eventually, if needed, either as an ex gratia payment to those who have potentially suffered from government's involvement in PFAS in the water, or indeed for possible legal challenges that result in a lawsuit against the government?
Minister.
Sir, I have not had any conversations with any officers or others about compensation at this point, and certainly I would want to get to the very end of the reports that come back from the independent PFAS panel before that's even considered. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Renouf.
Thank you, sir. The Minister talks about the infrastructure that may be needed to reduce levels. Currently, Project Breakwater is examining long-term infrastructure spending. Would the Minister consider whether or not to include PFAS remediation as part of Project Breakwater?
Minister.
Sir, I have had some very, very initial discussions with the Chief Minister about how the funding for any new treatment works might be found. But at this point, it's far more important to me to get the new regulations right, to get the quality of the water correct and worry about who pays for it later. I've spoken with Jersey Water about that, and as the Deputy's just stated, it will be a considerable expense. In very broad terms, and at these very initial stages, some indications would state that it's around £20 million for each of the 2 treatment works we have currently in Jersey. It may be that those treatment works fall away and we build a new treatment work somewhere else on the island to serve the whole island. So for me, the money is the secondary consideration. The most important thing is getting the quality of the water right.
Supplementary.
Yes, I agree that getting the quality of the water right is a priority, but my understanding is that Project Breakwater is the long-term planning vision for infrastructure spending in the island, and therefore would it not make sense to include PFAS remediation as an item within it?
Minister.
It may well do, sir, but we need to remember that at this point in time, although we are a large shareholder in Jersey Water remains a private company. And as such, it would be, under normal circumstances, incumbent upon that company to go away and spend the money on any infrastructure works that were necessary and see how their balance sheet survives and where they get the money from to pay for it.
Final supplementary, Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. The Minister is well aware that this matter has been ongoing for some time, and therefore the residents, particularly and those with higher levels of PFAS in their blood systems, are extremely anxious. Will he commit, once he's received report 4, to a specific timeframe for delivering actions, and will he also reassure the Assembly that he has the resource available to him to meet his ministerial objective of delivering a plan for regulation within a short time frame?
Minister.
So there's a number of questions there. All I can do is assure the Assembly and the Deputy that as soon as I get the information required, I will be considering it and speaking with Jersey Water about where the new acceptable levels for PFAS will be. And at that point, I will also have to consider how quickly that has to come into force. But as I said previously, we need to be aware of the fact that if a new treatment works is required, it will not be something which will appear overnight, and certainly not in a couple of years.
Sir, I do think perhaps the Minister missed the question, which was about time frame and resource, just a commitment that there is resource dedicated to it.
Obviously, sir, I will commit to a time frame. Jersey Water will have to be aware of that if we are going to have a new treatment works. The resource will have to be found. I know it's secondary to the importance of the quality of the water, but money will have to be found and discussions will have to be had between Jersey Water and government to see how the funding is going to be put in place.
Thank you, Minister. Question 2, Deputy Andrews will put to the Minister for Housing. Deputy Andrews.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister detail what protection exists for buyers of immovable properties in situations when the seller withdraws from the contract before it is passed before the Royal Court, and advise whether there are any plans to change the current process to provide more protection to buyers?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. The short answer to the first part is that there aren't really many protections for either party when something happens at the last minute, causing the transaction to fail before it reaches court. Obviously, that can be very upsetting and even devastating for those who had their hearts set on buying a home and can cause difficulties for situations with connected chains. There are things that buyers and sellers can do to protect themselves beforehand. They can choose to use pre-sale agreements, but obviously there's a balance to be struck there in weighing up the risks and potential benefits against the costs and time that that would take. Standard seller questionnaires can be used to help identify potential issues early on to give all parties a chance to mitigate against them causing problems further on down the line. I know that some would possibly desire that a wholesale look at the property transaction process with a view to making comprehensive changes was undertaken, and there may well be a point in the future where this could be done, but at this moment in time it's not something that I think I could fit in among the rest of my priorities.
Supplementary.
Yes, please, sir. Is the Minister of the opinion that at some point in time there perhaps needs to be an opportunity to look into this area and to potentially look at potentially bringing forward legislation in the future to protect those who are looking to acquire property? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
So I certainly don't think that there would be any harm in that if done at a right time where it wasn't detracting from other competing priorities. I don't have a fixed view on what changes ought to look like, and I know that there will probably be mixed views on that in different parts of the professions that support people in buying and selling homes. But at some point it would do no harm to do that, and if there are tweaks that could be done to improve the situation, that would be a discussion worth having at some point.
Deputy Ozer.
Thank you, sir. I haven't yet seen the Minister's written answer of the number of transactions, or the other Minister's answer on the recent issue of recent transactions. But in a time when there are a reduced number of transactions, and this work of conveyancing is largely carried out by the private sector, by conveyancers within legal firms. We do have a great system of title in Jersey. Would it now not be the time to actually harness the unused, unresourced issues within the conveyancing industry in order to modernise what I know is something that the conveyancers would welcome? And would you have discussions with the Law Society and maybe the conveyancers in order to advance something?
Minister.
Sir, I'm sorry to disappoint the Deputy with this answer, but I mentioned in my first answer that I simply don't think that I could, in a meaningful sense, accommodate that kind of project among the rest of my priorities. Members of my team have spoken to some people in the industry to get a view of where things currently stand, and some have been forthcoming as to what ideas they may have. But in terms of a comprehensive project to actually achieve meaningful change, it's not on my list of priorities at the moment. But as I said, I think there'd be no harm in doing that at some point in the future.
Constable St Mary.
Thank you, sir. The Minister correctly identifies that the source of the problem is the fact that most transactions are not legally binding transactions until they go to the Royal Court. In this connection, can I ask the Minister if he's aware, or does he recall, the review conducted by the Residential Property Transactions Review Panel in March 2018, where the first recommendation is, with a view to creating a greater degree of certainty, the Chief Minister should investigate, via consultation with interested parties, whether a pre-sale agreement should form part of a standard transaction process. The recommendation goes on, this should include a financial penalty for buyers, sellers who fail to comply with the agreement. Could the Minister advise whether he agrees with that sentiment, and again, whether he is inclined to discuss with the Chief Minister the final sentence of that recommendation being that the Chief Minister should report the findings of the consultation before the end of May 2019. Is the Minister prepared to take that forward and consider the other recommendations in that panel?
Minister.
Thanks. I was aware that that review took place, and I was delighted to hear that that particular recommendation was framed towards the Chief Minister rather than myself, and hope that he was listening to the question. But I'm certainly happy to raise this again with the Chief Minister in my next discussion with him. I know it's something that he's commented on in the past about the unfairness that there can exist in the system. I know that that's something he cares about, so I'm happy to raise it with him, but that particular recommendation was framed towards him rather than my portfolio.
Yes, Deputy Talia.
Thanks, sir. I know this issue has been going on a long time. I've been contacted many years ago by people in the removals industry, and they say that when a transaction unexpectedly doesn't go through, it does have knock-on effects. For example, often these services will be booked months in advance, only to be cancelled with no notice. Would the Minister consider, if necessary, asking for extra resources to conduct a short targeted piece of work in this area to see if there are any quick wins that could be suggested about how this issue might be ameliorated?
Minister.
So I'd always be at the mercy of the entire Council of Ministers if I were asking for extra resources in order to conduct that kind of work. So I'm not going to give an undertaking to do that, because I have to be honest, at this moment in time, even with extra resources, the staffing implications I have within my own team mean we really would be stretched if we were to lead on that kind of project. But if, as the scrutiny recommendations previously were aimed at the Chief Minister, if that was something he wanted to allocate within his team, my team could support it. But I simply don't think we have the capacity, even with extra resources at this moment.
And taking that point on board, sir, this is clearly a piece of work that could involve looking at court processes and involve other perhaps more fundamental questions about property transactions. Would the Minister encourage those who are interested in the Assembly more widely to speak to his ministerial colleagues to see if there's any appetite from ministers to set up a working group, not for the sake of it, but to produce results by the end of this term to perhaps move this issue forward?
Minister.
Well, most definitely, I would always want to encourage grassroots efforts like that for interested parties in society to transmit their views in a constructive way about what positive changes could be achieved to relevant government ministers. As I said before, I'm aware of at least one person in the industry who's, I think, made a very powerful case for change through his own channels, which my team have corresponded with him over. But if more want to take part in that kind of dialogue for us to consider for what might go into a future work programme, then that can only be a good thing.
Has your lights on? You've asked your question there.
Can I answer? I can answer another question.
No, you can't. No,
Oh,
sorry.
right.
Sorry. Final supplementary.
Please, sir. Thank you. Is the Minister aware of any particular cases where a buyer has been let down, and have any individuals brought this to his attention since he was elected to the office of Housing Minister? Thank you, sir.
Not specifically since I became Housing Minister, but I'm aware of instances before that. It's happened to people in my family who were left feeling very upset and let down because of things that had happened. So I know it's something that can cause great distress and heartache to people when they've got their hopes set on it. I'm led to believe that it happens in a very, very small proportion of attempted transactions that go to court. But that doesn't obviously lessen the significance it has on those who are affected by it. But it hasn't specifically been raised to me by constituents since I became Housing Minister, I don't think.
Thank you, Minister. Question 3, Deputy Wilson will put to the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning. Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Further to recent reports that teachers are leaving Jersey, and in light of the pay award accepted by teachers in 2024, what explanation can the Minister provide for why teaching staff are resigning and leaving the island?
Minister.
Thanks, and I thank the Deputy for her question. So there's two elements to the answer I'll give. One is a statistical one, which is always interesting. Actually, the rate of leaving teaching, there were 935 employed teachers in 31st of January this year. 44 teachers were recorded as leaving the island, which is a 4.9% rate, lower than the government rate of 7.1%. That includes teachers retiring, that includes teachers leaving the state sector to go to private schools, so remaining in teaching, and teachers leaving the island. However, for me, the statistical answer is lovely, but I would also say I've always had concerns about why it is teachers might be leaving the profession and what we can do in order to keep teachers in the profession. That is a relatively low rate, sir, but we want to make sure that that is as low as possible, and there are lots of other demands made on teachers as to reasons why they may be leaving the profession itself. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. Could he give us a bit more assessment or his own assessment of what those reasons might be? And does he think that pay may well be a factor in that scenario?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Yes, I was going to do that, and I thought it might be going on too long. Yeah, there are a number of reasons why teachers may. First of all, sir, it's a really tough job, a really tough job. Second, cost of living in Jersey affects all sectors of our economy. Finding housing for your family might be very difficult, sir. There may also be a change of career because the job is just something you don't want to do anymore. Sorry, I didn't get the second part of the question, which was... Oh, pay. So I was pleased to say that a pay deal, a 3-year pay deal had been made, but there are other elements as well that we need to look at. So when I came to office in this role, I was extremely disappointed that a letter had been sent to all teaching staff, effectively dividing them into individuals and asked them to accept a pay deal, or a letter which is Elon Musk style, so saying if you don't reply then it's seen as an acceptance. I would not have put my name to a letter like that, sir, and very quickly we settled the pay deal. But in addition to that, for the first time ever, we are looking at how, and not if, we will increase time for teachers in schools to prepare, plan and assess. I think workload is also one of the largest elements of why teachers are leaving the profession. And we are working as quickly as possible on that with the trade unions, where we have a much better relationship. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Deputy Ozef.
Thank you, sir. The Minister wisely and correctly cites one of the possible reasons of teachers leaving is likely housing and cost of living issues. Would he agree that it might be useful in order to gain statistics on and doing a questionnaire for departing teachers and the reasons why they're actually doing it, so that those of us that are concerned with those issues can actually prove it? And I'll come back with a supplementary.
Thank you, sir. Yes, I think what the Deputy is referring to, sir, is exit interviews. And exit interviews have been an issue that I've brought up so many times, and my Assistant Minister certainly has brought them up. I don't think we've got that entirely right yet. There are exit interviews. If somebody's leaving the island, it can be slightly challenging, so it might be done online. I think, so the numbers are relatively small. That doesn't mean complacency, and we must never be complacent with any workforce. Because the numbers are relatively small, it shouldn't be too difficult to find out why. Housing, cost of living, the job itself, changes in people's lives is another issue, and flexibility in workforce. We are doing some work on that, particularly for women returning to the workforce, so which I think we can improve, and there are some good ideas that we've got coming forward. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. Having been civilly partnered to a teacher that was coming to Jersey, unfortunately they didn't come. I'm very well aware of the issues of terms and conditions and cost of living that teachers is, because I live in a teacher's world. My twin is one as well. So I wonder if the Minister would also confirm in this important question whether the terms and conditions review that I understood that was carrying on is actually going to be resolved. I hear different stories about the terms and conditions review. It was promised, it wasn't going to be done. It's being done, but not satisfactorily. He's a unionist. Will he actually be publicly and say, is he content with the terms and conditions review? When is it going to be done? And when are teachers going to get a fair day's pay for a fair day's work?
Thank you, sir. If I'm correct, so I'm a trade unionist, sir. I'm not sure if I'm a unionist, but there we go. I agree. Yes, the terms and conditions work has been undertaken. Has the outcome of that terms and conditions work been exactly what everyone has wanted? The answer is no. And we are in a position where what we need to do is find a way forward. What I want to do is to actually look at a way in which we can start that process of providing more PPA time, planning, preparation and assessment. Just remembered what it was, time in particularly in our primary schools. We are looking at some work, for example, so that had happened in Guernsey, that they've done very, very well. We went and shared some ideas. They're looking at things that we're doing so that we can provide for that, and in secondary schools. The money for that is difficult to find, but I want to do that. Certainly by January, it won't be perfect, but I think we can find a ground where trust is restored in our relationship with the trade unions, and trust is restored that we do actually want to improve the lot of the teaching profession, and then we can move forward. I hope that is the case, sir. That will be supported in this Assembly, in any government plan, and I look forward to that happening. Thanks.
Deputy Catherine Curtis.
Thank you, sir. Two of the recommendations from the CEHA panel's secondary education funding review, which had an impact on improving the teacher experience, one was to increase non-contact time, which the Minister's mentioned. The other was to reassess the budget for continuous professional development. So can the Minister explain what progress has been made in these areas?
Minister.
Yes, thank you, sir. Absolutely, and that is one of the keys. One of the biggest obstacles to CPD, or continued professional development, is finding the time to release teachers to do it. And some of the work we're doing with providing, if you like, a system whereby we have available teachers all year that can be booked by head teachers means that that can be planned more effectively. Therefore, the money spent in CPD can be guaranteed to be used in the correct way. Once we've done that, we can look at where is the best spend and where the actual need is for continued professional development, because some of that, sir, is sharing good practice across our schools. We have very, very good teachers on this island who want to share practice. Sometimes there are obstacles simply of time to get together and share that practice. And there are a number of little things that we can do in order to enable that to begin with before we look further at the budget itself. But yes, these are all things that are on the agenda in the coming weeks and months. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary?
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister give an idea of the time when these changes may be ready, completed?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Extra money would need to be in the government plan for January. However, we are looking at pace to see what we can get instigated by September, particularly with some of the work that we, as I've said, shared with other jurisdictions. That seems to be working really well. It's a very simple solution to some of the problems themselves. So I would say my ambition, as ever, is to do this as quickly as possible and have something in place, even if it is pilot schemes that for schools to show, does this work effectively, is it improving the lot, if you like, of teachers in September, and then have something more general in place from January, so we know we're spending the money well and it's effectively used. So that's the only timescale I can give at this moment, sir.
Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. My questions have been answered.
Thank you. Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. Just to ask the Minister, just following up on these terms and conditions, it's been pointed out to me that it was in March 2024 that he said he was going to deliver on terms and conditions in September 2024. And just to remind him that the previous government had said that they were actually going to deliver the terms and conditions in March 2024. So I'm slightly concerned. Here we are in, what are we, March 25. And we still have no delivery on terms and conditions. Can the Minister explain why there's been such a delay?
Thank you, sir. Well, I didn't inherit any action to be taken on terms and conditions. So that wasn't going to happen in March 2024. The terms and condition changes we're talking about require money and require a settlement of a pay dispute. What I inherited was a pay dispute that was ongoing. That was settled first before we could get on to talk about terms and conditions. Terms and conditions are being looked at continuously. Those negotiations are going on, and we are coming to, I think, some agreements, certainly with head teachers and with other teaching professions, to look at the way in which we can, and I mention again, for the first time ever, look at actually increasing time for teachers to teach and prepare, actually looking at how we can continue to increase that time and use it effectively. Yes, I would like to see that happen as quickly as possible. The cost of that is significant, I recognise that, but I think the argument around that is accepted, and the quicker we move forward, that yes, my answer to the Deputy would have been loved to have done it at that time. I don't think that was in place. We had a pay dispute when I took over. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. I mean, I'm concerned. If the Minister makes a promise in March to the Assembly for delivery in September, I'm still struggling to understand why make the promise in March and then fail to deliver in September, and now making excuses so much further down the track as reasons for delay. Maybe you shouldn't be making promises in the first place.
Thank you, sir. And it's clear from the sort of approach that's taken there as to why it was so difficult for the unions to negotiate in the first place. So what we're trying to do is get a reality, a sustainable approach to future time for teachers. We have a settled pay dispute for 3 years that did not exist. Instead, sir, what I would call almost illegal letters were sent up, a letter which I would not have put my signature to. And sir, what I wanted to happen was exactly that. If those things don't happen in that timescale, it doesn't mean we're not working at them. Doesn't mean I don't feel disappointed that it hasn't happened. But we are working incredibly hard to get these things in place. It's challenging. Of course it's challenging. And it's not just about PPA time. It's about other things, such as looking at the whole arena, is the best word I can think of education itself, and seeing how we can work better across our schools. And there have been other things as well that have been prioritised, such as that we've taken on board, I think, that have helped in schools as well, sir.
Yes, we've got some more questions, but remind members this is a question about why teachers are resigning and leaving the island, and we shouldn't stray too far from that. Deputy Moore.
Sir, without wishing to sound like we're sticking to a line of questioning, the Minister did in his original answer refer to the impact of workload upon teachers. And although he has his perspective, which he has laid out to the Assembly, other views and recollections are quite different to what was set out. And contrary to popular opinion, it is possible to carry on two different sets of work at the same time. Terms and conditions was the part of work, the work stream that would actually deal with workload of teachers. It was on track for March 2024 to be delivered. So will the Minister please look forward and tell the Assembly when it will be delivered, because the change of government has done nothing but stall the progress that is having the greatest level of impact upon teachers?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. So I simply do not accept that interpretation of where we are, and the interpretation that by March 2025, a full dealing with all of the terms and conditions outcomes was available. It simply was not, sir. We were still in dispute. Teachers were being told you either accept the pay deal or you will be paid separately, which would have been the worst possible scenario to enter into terms and conditions talks. What we've done so far, sir, is actually enter into those effectively, look for ways in which we can move forward, and to have a much better relationship with the trade unions, so there's a realism as to what we can do. And as I mentioned earlier, what I would like to see, sir, is as soon as possible, even if it's pilots in September, because we're looking with money that we've got now, to look at ways in which extended PPA time can be used effectively in as many schools as possible, so that we can introduce things in January. That will have a cost. I'll have to take that to a government plan, and I'm certain from what's said today, a number of members will support that if it comes in the government plan, and I look forward to that support. But I would say, sir, that we have a healthy relationship with trade unions now. We have a healthy relationship with the teaching profession when they know they're respected, particularly by myself, my deputy and other and members of the department. We have 2 members of schools which are now working with SIPES 2 days a week, so we have a much better link with what's actually happening in schools and understanding what's happening in schools. So there's a number of pieces of work that are underneath the surface. And so terms and conditions are not one isolated thing. It could be things like unified timetables, it could be about the 20 tasks which staff are not asked to do, it could be things about the way we use IT more effectively, and I would completely agree with the Deputy if she wants to ask a question about IT that hasn't worked. No, it hasn't. Absolutely agree, and we work really hard on that. So there are a number of things there, sir, but we are working as quickly as we can. Thanks.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. Sir, it appears that money and funding is the issue. Could the Deputy explain why this Council of Ministers will not support their Minister and deliver the funding that is required to deliver the change in terms and conditions?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. As a previous Chief Minister and Council Minister, I'm sure the Deputy understands that the funding process for the government plan takes place in advance. So as we develop more things and you want more money, you have to go in another bid. That's exactly what we'll do. I hope that support will be there. If that support is there, we'll act as quickly as we can. If not, we'll act as quickly as we can in January and use our money as creatively as possible to get things in place for teachers. But that's a real key difference. What I'm looking to do is actually do that for teachers. I'm not looking for conflict with the profession. I'm not looking to downgrade them. I'm not looking to say to them that you are creating problems for us. I'm saying let's work together and let's try to get the best possible workforce that we can, sir.
Deputy Kovacs.
Thank you, sir. As the Minister stated that one of the reasons that poses challenges on retaining teachers is the cost of living, what is he doing to work together with his ministerial colleagues in adopting policies to alleviate it?
Minister.
It's quite a wide question to this question. Well, I would support a number of things. I would support the removal of GST from food. I would support rent regulation. I would support the sort of things that are coming through on housing. I would support the removal of this social security cap so there's more money available. Those are all things I would support which have not been supported in this Assembly by other members, Deputy Kovacs aside. So there are a number of things that we would I would support as we move forward. In terms of education remit, all I can work with is ensuring that the pay rise is there, and it is there with 1% above inflation for the next 3 years, I believe. Might have got that wrong. That we're doing everything we can to try and improve terms and conditions as quickly as we possibly can. Not perfectly, but we're moving forward in that, and I think there is a growing trust there, which is really important. And I think as well, sir, one other element I would say is I am keen that we stop using education as a political football. That would help a great deal, keep people in the profession, because they don't feel that they're being blamed for every ill of society. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary. Deputy Breniff. Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. And I would like to ask the Minister if one of other reasons for teachers leaving profession and leaving the island is if he consider if it's instability. And the SEPS department, we have the third interim chief officer within 3 years, 4 years, and now we don't have director of education. Does the Minister consider that we do need a role of director of education in Jersey?
I think so, yes. There is an interim person in that role who I think is working his socks off. I would suggest, sir, that there is a huge void between teachers standing in front of classes in the classroom wondering about the size of their mortgage or their rent or how they're paying things with their family, and who's the person at the top of SIPES. One of the actions that's been taken to try and close that gap is to second 2 head teachers 2 days a week to make that link and do some work which is happening rapidly, sir, and will be reported back very, very soon. I've already seen some of the work they've started, so that there is a greater understanding between schools and SIPES. Schools understand what SIPES as a department does, and SIPES understand what schools actually do. And by that interaction, I think, will really help to move those 2 areas forward and get the support where it's needed. But no, I can't say that how I would make the link between changes to directors and staff leaving the school. If the deputy has that link, I'd be interested to know. It'd be very interesting to know.
Supplementary.
Absolutely. Thank you. If my understanding correct, the interim is for the children, education, young people, and skills. We do have head of skills. We do have chief officer for chief social worker for children's services, and we currently don't have the head of education, which education for me, and I would like to check with the minister, for him it's much beyond school. We do have college, we have University of Jersey, we do have apprentice trainings, we do have early years, and it's about sustainable way or constant way going forward. This would probably director of education that can go through the terms, political terms deliver. So does minister think that the job of director for education or any other form leading education in Jersey is required, or it can be substituted by 2 head teachers 2 days a week?
Thank you, sir. First of all, sir, the 2 head teachers are not a substitution for that. They are a completely different role to increase understanding. I've never been a believer, sir, in large layers of management, particularly in schools. I think we have a profession of very, very qualified people that we should allow to do their jobs. The interim role takes on both children education, that's absolutely correct. There are other members of the department who are stepping up and taking on roles. And I think, sir, what we want is an effective and smooth way in which we understand what's happening in schools, give schools the responsibilities to where they have the skills. And I think that the restructure that we can undertake will exactly do that. I don't believe, sir, that simply more layers of management does anything other than create more layers of management. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Wilson, final supplementary.
Thank you, sir. Thank you to the Minister for his answers. Does he believe that people taking on other roles is really an act of desperation to keep the show on the road? And does he accept that the quicker he develops terms and conditions and a resolution to the terms and conditions and cost of living will actually reverse the position that we currently find ourselves in? And can he assure parents that he's doing all he can to bring that to a conclusion?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. First of all, I don't accept the language of desperation. Everything is such an attack on education at the moment. It's such a shame that we get this in the Assembly so much. Second, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, the rates of teachers leaving is relatively low, but I'm still interested in why they're leaving. I can reassure parents, actually, that we are recruiting teachers, that teachers are in place. And I can reassure parents that the teachers that are there in front of their children every day are massively committed to ensuring that their children have the best experience they possibly can. In terms of terms and conditions, yes, absolutely want to do that. But I remind this Assembly that when I took over, teachers were in dispute. They were striking. They were demonstrating outside of this Assembly. That hasn't happened for the last year. And I hope that doesn't happen again. And I hope we can come to a good resolution of terms and conditions and start to build way into the future, into a sustainable way, so that future Assemblies don't have that situation again that was created by the last government. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Question 4, Deputy Gardner will put to the Minister for Health and Social Services. Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise what considerations, if any, has been given to offering PFAS testing for residents outside of the two plumes in the St. Juan's Bay and Pond Market area?
Minister.
Sir, as the Deputy knows, we have an independent scientific advisory panel that's been established to provide evidence-based advice on PFAS so that we can make informed decisions in the best interests of islanders. The panel has already completed 2 reports, and their 3rd report, which is due for completion at the end of June, will make recommendations on how we might test more widely across the island and what interventions we might use to reduce levels of PFAS in blood. So I hope the Deputy agrees that issues of this sort are best dealt with on the basis of independent scientific advice. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Thank you for the Minister. My question was prompted by attending public event at St. Peter's, where was confirmed that none of the areas of Jersey are excluded currently. We don't know what's included, but we currently cannot exclude any of the areas. I understand that we are waiting for the report, and I would welcome a report. What consideration Minister has given to offer maybe to offer testing for people that think in experiencing the symptoms from poison PFAS, or at least a random test around the island to understand the extent of this, to understand the position where we are at?
Minister.
Sir, I accept there's a little bit of a dilemma in this regard. It is a difficult one. People are obviously concerned. I don't think we can just have a random approach to this. It is tricky. The tests are £220 each, not £20 as was cited in the media. They have to go to a specialist laboratory, I think somewhere in Germany. There aren't many laboratories that can deal with this. If we take a random approach to it, you could have 100,000 people demanding that they get equal treatment and that everybody gets a test. And simple arithmetic tells me that would cost about £22 million. It would be unmanageable. There wouldn't be a laboratory that's capable of doing the tests. So what we've decided to do is to wait for the panel to come up with a recommendation as to how we might go about this in an orderly way so that we can get some further test results from around the island. I think it would be difficult for us to take that decision, sir.
Italia.
So I can see that this whole process is fraught with problems. For example, blood tests from around the island, you don't know where people have lived. It's just a snapshot at any one time. But leaving that aside, the question, I guess, is who pays for the independent scientific advice?
That scientific advice is being paid for by central government at this point in time.
I mean, I'm tempted to invoke the adage, he who pays the piper calls the tune, sir, but I'm not sure if that will be understood necessarily if it's parliamentary, sir. But can I ask the Minister that perhaps the more important question is really, once the blood tests have come back and they show that individuals in Jersey have a certain amount of PFAS in their body, the question then, of course, is how it got there in the first place. And could the Minister say whether he's thinking ahead to that point? because of course that's the point at which scientific evidence could diverge, with the government on the one hand saying it's not our fault, that came there through other sources, whereas those who have been affected, perhaps living in those areas, might actually wish to start making claims saying that we believe that government is responsible for this. What's the action plan in that regard?
Minister.
So I think that sort of spells out why we're using scientists to advise us. I think we're sort of pretty much at the forefront of investigating this. There aren't many countries that are on the front foot and spending as much money per capita as we are on this. And some of the advice that we're getting already suggests that PFAS, A, is everywhere, and B, can be taken into the system by various means. And my understanding is that fish, and particularly meat, have high concentrations of PFAS. So I think until we establish where the concentrations of PFAS actually emerge from, we're in quite difficult territory. That's why we're having to be extremely careful about how we proceed. So,
Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir, can I offer my support to the Minister for his backing of the scientific committee, which I think is doing an excellent job, and indeed that is a very good way to proceed. But can he then say whether he's prepared to make any commitment to definitely implement the findings of the scientific committee panel, rather, when it comes to report?
Minister.
once again, it's hard to provide an absolute commitment because we're not quite sure what those recommendations are going to be. I should imagine that in the main that we would. We then have to look at the costs and the political implications of those recommendations. So all I would say is let's wait till those recommendations come through, and we'll make those decisions at that time. So,
supplementary. Final supplementary, Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. As Minister mentioned that the PFAS might be sources in various fish, meat and other, maybe in the meantime, the Minister can encourage public health to actually put proper communication to the public about PFAS, sources of PFAS, what to look out, because I think there is lots of maybe misconception or right conception going around, so we're all learning it as we progress. So whatever is known to the public health now can be put in some shape or form to the wider public of Jersey.
Minister.
I think, to the best of my knowledge, any conclusive evidence that we have is probably in the public domain already. We are reliant on this team of scientists to provide that information, and when that information comes out, that will all be in the public domain. And as I say, I don't think it's up to us as politicians to preempt that. So.
Thank you, Minister. Question 5, Deputy Iyer will put to the Minister for External Relations. Deputy Iyer.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister commit to the transfer to Ukraine of all frozen Russian assets held in Jersey, and if not, will he assure the Assembly that if a peace deal is reached, those frozen assets will not be returned to Russia until such time as any war reparations required have been met in full? Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. The assets subject to an asset freeze under the Sanctions and Asset Freezing Jersey Law 2019 still legally belong to the legal owner. There are no powers under that law which would allow Jersey to transfer or otherwise spend, donate or loan frozen assets. Jersey implements the UK's financial sanctions regime, and therefore we will follow the position taken in the UK when and if a peace deal is reached.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. If other European finance ministries decide to set up a compensation trust using the frozen Russian assets, which is being discussed currently, would the Minister transfer the frozen Russian assets held in Jersey to such a fund, or would he only be influenced by the decision of Westminster? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Firstly, of course, legally it wouldn't be within the Minister's power to do such a thing. It would require a change in legislation which would involve this Assembly. Secondly, these matters are best dealt with on a more global consensus basis. We do consider what the European Union is doing, as I know the UK would consider what the European Union is doing. I've had a number of conversations both in Westminster and in Brussels about these matters, and there is no common consensus at this point. We have to be careful not to confuse privately owned assets with state-owned assets, which are being treated in a different manner.
Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. I found a slight contradiction. I may have just not quite understood, but the Minister said that the Jersey law does not allow us to do anything with the assets that are frozen, but that he would follow the UK lead. If the UK lead is to do something, in other words, if UK legislation allows something which Jersey legislation does not, what will he do?
As I indicated, it depends what the action is. If the action is simply the lifting of sanctions, then that would automatically happen under the Jersey legislation. If it is to do something else with the assets other than that straightforward lifting, then that would be a decision for this Assembly, because it would require legislation.
Supplementary?
So, to be really clear, if we wished to do something with those assets, then we would require an amendment to legislation or primary legislation. What would be the route?
Minister.
Well, so I haven't considered what the route would be. I imagine it would be a change to the sanctions and asset freezing Jersey law. It would depend what the global consensus was. And of course, with all these matters, ministers take advice from the relevant people who need to advise, which would be the best route. It may be, because it was such a bespoke issue relating to a single jurisdiction, that a new piece of primary law would be introduced. It may be that speed of action was more important, and therefore it was simply an amendment to the existing regulations.
Final supplementary, Deputy Ayer.
Thank you, sir. There are £230 billion of Russian assets frozen in total. This will not match the expected £400 billion of war damage reparations that will be required. Has the Minister had direct engagement with the United Kingdom or with other European countries to discuss the matter of war reparations? And if not, does he intend to instigate such conversations to ensure a resolution of this matter? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
So as I indicated earlier, I have had conversations with UK ministers and with senior officials in Brussels from member states about the use of frozen assets, not about war reparations. I don't think that necessarily falls within the remit of Jersey's External Relations Minister.
Thank you, Minister. Question 6. Deputy Taddy will put to the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Deputy Lew.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise what government funding was allocated to the Corn Rights Festival in 2022, 23 and 24, and whether any money has been allocated for 25, and if not, why not?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. So in 2022, the government allocated £24,962 to the Corn Rights Festival. In 2023, £31,137. In 2024, £33,882. And for this year, we have allocated £30,000, sir, a similar level of funding for 2025. However, this year, sir, due to a change in internal resources, i.e. my department has a lot less money than it had last year, we are not in a position as a department to manage the event, though we are funding people to do that management.
Thanks, sir. Thanks, sir. I'm slightly bemused to find out that the department has got less money, given the fact that the 1% is more. The 1% for arts, culture and heritage is more than they would have got if they'd have stuck with the original government position. So whilst his department might have less money, culture, arts and heritage has more money. And I'm glad to see that at least some has been earmarked for the Corn Rights Festival. Could the Minister give an assurance that he will be working proactively to make sure that one way or the other, as far as possible, the Corn Rights does go ahead, even if it's delivered externally to his department?
Minister.
Sir, if there's a desire to put the Corn Rights on, then I'm happy to provide funding to those people who are willing to do that.
Thank you, Minister. Question 7, Deputy Scott will put to the Chair of the Privileges and Procedures Committee. Deputy Scott.
Thank you, sir. Further to the response to written question 428/2024, will the Chair state the number of States members who have attended cybersecurity training offered as part of the State's GREF programme of training for members during this political term?
Chair of PPC.
Thank you, sir. Further to my answer to written question 428/2024, 7 States members attended the whole of the cybersecurity session held on the 3rd of December 2024, with a further 2 members attending some of the session.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. That is a little alarming. I'm interested in any leadership that the PPC has shown in this area. Could the chair of the PPC disclose what percentage of her committee has attended the training that was offered, and what amount has been given by her committee to discuss the importance of good cybersecurity practice by members of the States Assembly?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you, sir. I'm not certain how many members of my committee attended the training, but I would like to point out to Deputy Scott that I, like many members in here, have very busy schedules. So look at my diary for the 3rd of December. It was a really busy day, and I, like many members in this Assembly, was committed to meetings, etc., elsewhere. However, I would welcome the opportunity to receive cybersecurity training. And I'm aware that the Deputy has not been able to attend all training sessions that have been offered by the GREF for other things due to a busy schedule. I can find out how many of my members went, and yes, PPC has discussed cybersecurity training.
Thank you, Chair. Question 8, Deputy Renouf will put to the Minister for the Environment. Deputy Renouf.
Further to the response to written question 86/2025 regarding changes to supplementary planning guidance for developments with a floor space greater than 3,000 square foot, will the Minister advise what consideration he gave to any officer advice he received and to any public support that was expressed when the guidance was adopted in 2023 before deciding not to hold a public consultation and to make changes to the guidance?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I will always have regard to the professional advice that's available to me when it comes to the development of new or the revision of existing planning guidance. Similarly, I gave consideration to the consultation response, which included the views of the public, where the guidance was that contained the original provision was first adopted. I have regard to all of that. However, it was my considered judgment that this was a minor change to existing guidance and did not therefore warrant wider consultation again.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir. In the officer report that accompanied the decision, it is stated that the only reason for the review of the supplementary planning guidance was because 3 high net worth individuals had approached government to ask for the change. How did the Minister balance their dislike of the planning guidance against the overwhelming public support for the guidance expressed in the original consultation?
Minister.
Sir, I did not have any contact from anybody about this other than one member of government, and I decided on that person's request to have a look at the guidance. And I looked at it and I took, as I said, officer advice. That officer advice said a number of things, but it was clear to me that this guidance had made no difference whatsoever. And while therefore there was an argument to say if there was no difference, you could leave it there, my view was that because it had made no difference and because the perception was that Jersey was closed for business, that it would make no difference therefore to remove it, which is what I did, sir.
Deputy Oza.
Sir, I wonder whether the Minister would say that whilst the report may have cited 321Es, I haven't read the ministerial decision, but I can imagine that he will have received representations from the building industry that they are tittering on the brink. Building contractors have fallen by the wayside, are going bust, and would he actually not agree that anything that we can do to boost the confidence in the building industry, which is done so by lifting this provision is a good thing to do? And would he share my view that it's important to look at things in the round and not have government interfering and regulating in things that really are maybe prejudiced to maybe people who've got the loudest voices, because it's 2-1-Es that have, but there's a silent majority that hasn't?
So, as I said previously, no 2-1-Es have made contact with me. Indeed, the only contact I've had from anybody in this regard since I made my decision was one architect last week that thanked me for doing it, and that wasn't, he didn't email specifically me to talk to me about that, it was about another matter. But the Deputy is absolutely right. I have stated recently, quite publicly, that I want more economic value to be put into decisions when it comes to planning applications, and the development construction industry has been going through some tough times recently, but I think encouraging the economy is hugely important, and as is the reduction of red tape, which I believe this is.
Supplementary?
Thank you, sir. I wonder whether the Minister would be even bolder and actually go, maybe not as far as looking across the Atlantic and say, drill, baby, drill, but would he actually send out the very clear message that he wants a planning department that says, build, islanders, build, so that we don't have a contracting property market and a contracting construction industry? Does he want to send a positive message out that he's prepared to do things, even though it's in some quarters unpopular? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
So, obviously, I'm going to do what I can. But the Deputy needs to be reminded we have an island plan agreed in this Assembly which is full of policies, and those policies need to be adhered to. And the drill, baby, drill analogy would not apply in Jersey. I'm certainly not going to say to members build, build and build. There's policies that need to be adhered to. We do want to encourage construction where it meets policy, and I will do what I can to get the island building, but it has to be done within the policies of the Bridging Island Plan. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. In this review of the 3,000 square feet properties, did the Minister give any consideration the impact this would have on the built-up area, as this is the site where most new homes are supposed to be built, and we start building larger properties within the built-up area will reduce sites for new homes?
Minister.
So obviously I had consideration for both the built-up area and outside of the built-up area, but I don't need to remind the Deputy, who's a member of the Planning Committee, that it was my view that the policies that I spoke about in the last answer are there, and I think they perfectly cover any sort of development both in or outside of the built-up area. I didn't think this particular supplementary planning guidance was helpful, and as the officer report stated, it was making no difference at all. So it was just a question of perception, and I decided that removing this red tape was more preferential.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. And also, as this piece of supplementary planning guidance covers residential space standards as a whole, is the Minister any closer to a response to my proposition?
So I'll very briefly, I know that's straying from the...
That's outside the question, isn't it?
I can answer it very quickly, sir. I am making progress and we'll report back very soon.
All right, thank you. Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you. The Minister, sir, says former policy made no difference at all, but I would point him to an application in my parish that I didn't sit on, where an application was refused under the guidance for providing grossly over the size homes. A new application came forward for the site with family homes of a greater quantity because of that policy. Does he not see a risk that in our built-up area we will have prime sites for good, affordable, open market homes now delivering fewer units of larger luxury homes as a result of this change?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. The Deputy makes a good point, but the original justification for introducing the supplementary planning guidance came in a very different time, when I think the housing was, the island was facing more of a housing crisis than it is now. And it appears to me that it was simply an attempt to limit the number of larger homes on sites that could potentially have smaller homes put on them. And while I accept the Deputy's analysis of that, I think very much that sites for a large number of very small homes and sites for a very small number of large homes are slightly different, and cost has got to come into it.
Supplementary? Deputy Wilson.
So my question was asked earlier, thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. Officer advice was for the Minister to consider engaging with the high net worth community to explain that 3,000 square foot planning guidance doesn't make it impossible to develop very large houses. And the report also noted to a large extent opposition to the guidance seemed to be rooted in the perception rather than the reality of the possibility. Why did the Minister not take officer advice and correct those misconceptions?
Minister.
So, as I said, I did take quite a bit of officer advice and we discussed this, and the advice came quite clearly to me that this particular piece of supplementary planning guidance wasn't making a great deal of difference. We do have policies in the island plan for disproportionately increasing the size of homes and for homes which are increasing the gross floor space or the building footprint or the visual impact. I believe there's a number of policies in the island plan that would stop large homes being built if they were out of context and out of setting.
Supplementary. Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. The word perception has come up a number of times. Did the Minister consider perceptions that may come into play with changing government policy at the request of 3 high net worth individuals?
So I can't stress enough, this is not changing government policy. It's a supplementary planning guidance. It cannot go against government policy.
Supplementary. Final supplementary, Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. So the Deputy Curtis has pointed out there that the policy did make a difference. It was designed to deliver more family homes rather than homes for large residences. The Minister seems to have slightly forgotten what was in his own report. It says the basis for the review of the 3,000 square foot floor place planning parameter for new homes has emerged at the request of the head of high value residency engagement, and the key issues raised were to the 3,000 square foot floor place threshold are as follows: 3 clients who have projects that are directly concerned by the changes. So does the Minister accept that if you fly in on a private jet and give £250,000 a year to the Exchequer, then you get to write your own planning guidance? Can the Minister explain how this will encourage public confidence in the fairness of the planning system?
Minister.
So I don't know if the Deputy is saying that I received correspondence from 3 individuals, and I'm saying here today I did not receive that. I had a conversation with a member of an officer in government who may well represent these people. He did not tell me he had anybody speaking to him about this other than, and I did what he asked, which was to review the guidance. I have to say that I wasn't happy about it when it came in the first place, but it is guidance, and as I've said, it can't change the policy. Though policy H9 is a particularly strong policy, I believe it works well, and I made my decision accordingly.
Thank you, Minister. Question 9, Deputy Stevenson will put to the Minister for Infrastructure. Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister explain the reasons for the permanent closure of the creche at Lekeneve Sports Centre, and what consideration, if any, has been given to its reopening to encourage and facilitate exercise for parents and carers in line with government commitments to increase physical activity levels and support mental well-being?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. And, sir, can I start by welcoming the Deputy back to the Chamber? It's great to see her face to face, sir, but judging from my inbox, I know she has kept herself busy. Sir, Lekeneve Sports Centre operated a creche from 1996 until March 2020, offering limited sessions. The creche saw a reduction in uptake from 2018, and its closure was finalised during the COVID pandemic. At the time of its closure, the creche was making significant losses, and there were also persistent challenges with staffing shortages. There are no current plans for us to reopen the creche due to the lack of budget and space. However, we understand and hope that the nursery at Lekeneve will reopen soon, and I'm told there is potential for creche facilities to be part of that services. I've asked officers to explore this opportunity with the operator. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir, and I thank the Minister for his comments at the beginning. I think they were kind ones, they were.
I appreciate the answer as well. The Minister is probably aware that a petition has been launched calling for the reopening of the creche at Lekeneve. Will he agree to meet with the petitioner to discuss the matter further and keep an open mind about potential ideas that she and others have for what could be possible?
I'm more than happy, sir, to meet with the petitioner and others to discuss the creche. And, sir, can I take this opportunity to thank the team at Lekeneve? They're just about to head into their busiest weekend of the year with the swim marathon. I think they do a great job. I'll take this opportunity to thank them. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Question 10, Deputy Balash will put to the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning. Deputy Balash.
Can the Minister confirm whether his department cancelled a booking at Highlands College and subsequently recommended that teachers and safeguarding leads should not attend a presentation on the 5th of March 2025 by the founder of Transgender Trend? And if so, will he explain why?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. So Highlands College and indeed all schools are responsible for bookings and cancelled the booking. I support them in this and the control over their bookings and deciding on the bookings they make. Staff were informed that this was not training organised by SIPES and therefore are not a mandatory event.
Supplementary.
So the founder of Transgender Trend is a highly respected expert on child dysphoria who was recently awarded a British Empire Medal for services to children. Did the Minister's officials take that expertise into account before firmly discouraging teachers from hearing what she had to say?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I reiterate what was said was this was not training organised by SIPES. It was very clear what it was about because it was well advertised. Second, sir, questions around transgender in the college are real and require real sensitivity for young people. If a college or a school are unsure of the content of a talk or have any concerns where it may be welcomed by young people, I can understand why they might err on the side of caution. And I think that's fair and sensible. And I would say, sir, for somebody who is a specialist and would understand safeguarding, I'm quite surprised by how the reaction to this. Because I would have thought that anyone talking about it would say, OK, the last thing we want to do is upset a group of people. They were offered alternative accommodation at St Paul's. They've been offered accommodation in a parish hall. And almost weekly, the organisation, almost weekly double page spreads in our local newspaper. So the word is not being, the message, whether you agree with it or not, and whether parts of our community agree or not, is not being lost. This was just about trying to do the right thing at the right time. I am quite surprised, sir, that it's had this reaction, and I think it is, it's not really necessary. Thank you, sir.
Conrad St Brillard.
Thank you, sir. Would the Minister agree that it's inappropriate that gender ideology discussions between students and teachers are kept from parents?
Thank you, sir. Is this to do with the question of a booking?
Yes. Is this related to the question?
Yes, sir.
Well, in what way? I was expecting a slightly longer answer
Well,
than that.
so the booking for the presentation was in connection with gender ideology, and I would have thought there was a linkage between the cancellation of the booking and this particular point, but I can put a different question if...
yes, put a different question.
Thank you, sir. Would the, in terms of the presentation rejected by the Minister's team, would he agree that attempts to derail a presentation by the nationally recognised academic by a minority group endorsed by the Minister's department, this presentation that took place at St Giles Parish Hall was once again entirely inappropriate, and the bullying campaign by this group, including its CEO, does little to foster good relations between those with differing opinions. Thank you, sir.
Minister.
So I have no idea what this has got to do with the booking at Highlands. and I don't recognise any of the things that were just said there. Gender ideology is not something that even exists in schools. That is a transference of a belief. Discussions happen in schools on all types of things about relationships. The rest of it, in terms of a group and bullying, I've absolutely no idea what that is about. And what this does show, sir, is why that this topic needs to be kept away, and these battles need to be kept away from children, because the children in our schools I just need to help to be navigated through growing up, full stop. All of our children. And that's what teachers do. And what I don't want, sir, is young people to be unwilling conscripts as foot soldiers in a wider culture war that's going on in the UK and across the world, but is not happening in Jersey and our schools. And I really would ask people to think very carefully about what they're saying about our schools at this time. And I would make a plea, please, let's stop this, this narrative. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary?
Thank you, sir. Would the Minister agree that the present guidelines issued by his department are in need of review?
Or which guidelines do you have in mind?
The Minister has issued guidelines to his teaching staff as to how they might deal with this sort of thing, and indeed, sir, were probably the reason for the rejection of the booking to the department.
Minister?
It's not, first of all, I'm not making a connection between any guidelines and the rejection of a booking. New guidelines were published yesterday. The policy is based upon our equalities law because gender identity is a protected characteristic. That makes sense, unless people want to deny our discrimination law. And the guidelines are exactly that. They're trying to help staff navigate through an extremely sensitive issue for all of our children, a very small proportion of our population, and parents. This started off as a question about a booking, and it seems to be extrapolated, sir, into a battle over ideology. And I'm going to say again, I don't think there's any place for that ideological battle in our schools. We're talking about children, not adults. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Ozer.
Sir, I don't wish to enter the discussion about gender dysmorphia or whatever, but on the one side, we have a campaign in the United Kingdom for freedom of speech in our learning institutes, and this is a higher institute. He uses the word children, but they are effectively adults, mainly. We call it the university campus. Is he in any way saying that that he is the minister overseeing anything which is less than the right to freedom of speech and debate issues, which are real issues because we're seeing them in the media, and our young adults must be surely given the opportunity of debating these issues, as difficult as they are at the earliest stage that they possibly can, because otherwise we'll insulate them from this other outside, very unkind world, which he's right to say about.
Yes, sir. It's a very complex question from the Deputy. Yes, I've no wish to stop free speech. We need to discuss, and I have no wish to stop any young person having the confidence to talk about things that concern them. And that's the crux of this issue, sir. What would we want for our own children? I would want my children to feel that they can talk about anything with me, and they'd feel supported. It's as simple as that. We are here to support children. All the stuff about ideologies needs to go out of the window. So I just make a couple of points. I didn't want to get drawn into this, but I will because we've moved away from bookings. In fact, I won't actually, sir. I'll keep on the bookings. So no, there's no question of stopping discussion, but we have to be really sensitive in the way that we do it so that young people are supported as they navigate through life, sir. It's not easy growing up nowadays. It's quite tough. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary?
So I will leave the follow-up to the bringing of the question, but there's clearly an issue about freedom of speech, which is not going to do justice in the questions today. But maybe he needs to go back and just would he confirm that this isn't basically a curtailment of the right to speak, irrespective of a different issue. But I'll leave it to the supplementary. There's no issue. Could be very brief. Does he agree with freedom of speech at Highlands?
Yeah, absolutely so. And there was no stopping this event happening. It was just happened at a different venue, and these venues have been elsewhere. And as I've said, our local newspaper gives a huge amount of paper space to the organisation itself. So I really can't say it, stand here saying, having been stopped. This was just a way of dealing with sensitivities that might be in the college to stop, to look after people. And I want our schools and institutions just to look after everybody. It's really pretty simple. And I was very surprised by the reaction to this, sir. Thank you.
Deputy Balash, final supplementary.
So I agree with the Minister that this is a sensitive issue. And that's the purpose of these questions. Will the Minister accept that there is a distinction between a watchful waiting policy with children showing transgender tendencies to see whether they grow out of their anxieties, and the Minister's gender affirmation policy encouraging children to choose whether they want to be a boy or a girl, and that there is a discussion to be had, an open discussion to be had on which approach is in the best interests of children.
Sir, can I raise a point of order?
Yes.
I think you might be thinking along these lines already, but to what extent does the supplementary not fit in with the original question, which is simply about an email that was sent and a booking that was made? So it's not a question about trans policy per se.
So my question is about freedom of speech and open discussion. It seems to me perfectly in order.
Well, do you want to ask your question again in the context of it being about freedom of speech and not wider issues in relation to matters you mentioned? I follow that, but...
Will the Minister accept that there is a distinction between a watchful waiting policy with children showing transgender tendencies to see whether they grow out of their anxieties, and the Minister's affirmation policy, gender affirmation policy, encouraging children to choose whether they want to be a boy or a girl, and that there is a mature discussion to be had on which approach is in the interests of children?
Well, that's no different from your first question, Deputy, and I think it departs significantly from the content of the question that was approved, and I disallow it. Well, do you want to, in the context of freedom of speech?
So I think I should. First of all,
I do have to raise a point of order here, sir, because I think we can't just submit ourselves to best intentions, sir. We do have standing orders, and Standing Orders 10 says that the contents of a question, part 1, a question shall relate to only one issue. A question has been submitted here which related to a very technical administration point, and if members wish to ask questions about any issue, including transgender issues, that's entirely valid, but they should do it by submitting a question about that issue, not about administrative questions that the Minister has fully answered. And I think, so with respect, your initial ruling should stand. And for ministers to say, I'll answer the question anyway, even though it's out of order, leads us into a very dangerous territory, sir.
Deputy Talia is correct. And if the question is...
The reason,
contrary to standing orders, then the answer shouldn't be given.
So the reason I was going to answer is I think there were some key points to correct something, because this has been going on for a long time, and I'm happy to answer.
Well, that would be the subject of another question on another day.
Well, I was trying to avoid that, so
well,
I was trying to cover this now because I think it would be positive. But I know you were, but I have a really good answer. But anyway,
you can communicate that in another form. The next question, Deputy War, will put to the Attorney General. Deputy War.
Thank you, sir. Will the HM Attorney General advise where any legal liability lies where a student is exposed to harmful content or addictive algorithms on another student's phone whilst on a school site?
Attorney General.
Sir, whether there is any legal liability and where it lies will depend on the facts of a particular case. So the answer I give is subject to that important caveat. But Sir, Article 35 of the Education Jersey law imposes statutory duties on head teachers in relation to the management of behaviour and discipline, which could arguably apply to the use of mobile phones in schools. And then secondly, there is also likely to be a customary or common law duty of care on the part of the Minister for Children at schools, which may give rise to a claim in negligence for an alleged breach. Sir SIPES has prepared an online safety policy dated August 2021, which I understand is subject to review. And the policy has specific provisions concerning mobile phones. I quote, "Mobile devices accessing the internet via the 3G or 4G networks are not subject to the same filtering and monitoring that school systems are. This means that these devices could potentially give access to unsuitable content while on school grounds and under school supervision, not only to the owner of the device but also to their peers. You will need to educate your learners of the potential impact to well-being of this. If your school allows children to bring mobile devices to school, you must have an in-school policy in place governing their safe and responsible use. There should also be a signed agreement with students and parents as to how the device should and shouldn't be used." So if schools actively observe this policy, in my view, it should be difficult to bring a successful claim for breach of statutory duty or negligence on the part of the school.
Supplementary?
Yes, thank you, sir, and thank the Attorney General for the answer. Can the Attorney General confirm that a school's duty of care extends beyond the classroom? For example, school toilets, changing rooms, playing fields, school trips, including trips and overnight stays?
Attorney.
Sir, in general terms, yes, although I repeat that it will always be subject to the particular facts of the case.
Deputy Joseph, then Deputy Gardner. Deputy Joseph.
Thank you, sir. Would the Attorney General agree that given schools act in loco parentis, there is at least a moral, if not a legal, duty of care to protect students from exposure to materials on school grounds, and the current policies that he's explained may not be sufficient in the light of those risks? He's the Attorney General to the Governor and the States Assembly, so I wonder if he could give some guidance for the underlying reason why the deputies brought this question, which is an important one.
So I'm not aware of any underlying reasons for why the deputies brought this question, but the question is about legal liability, and my answer was given in terms of legal liabilities. I've already confirmed that in general terms there is a duty towards school children, and it's both a statutory duty and a customary or common law duty of care.
Supplementary?
Is he entirely satisfied? Because he says it's up to the schools to do it, and he says he's not aware of the underlying reason. Therefore, perhaps his chambers have not been asked of the widespread concern that many parents have about the use of harmful content on. I've asked a question about whether a trial ban for smartphones in the classroom would be helpful to teachers, because it's a massive issue. He's saying that the question is pretty wide. It says whether any legal liability lies where a student is exposed. The question is quite clear that there is an underlying issue here. He set out the guidance. Is he completely satisfied that the guidance is, whilst being lawful perhaps, but is it being properly updated and kept in force? Because there's a lot of concern. Is he not aware?
Are you asking the Attorney to express an opinion on the current policy?
Has he expressed an opinion, sir?
Well, you're asking him to, and that's contrary to standing orders.
So has he not given an opinion on the policy that
Well,
he
he's
set
not
out?
supposed to under standing orders. You're
Well,
asking him
ask
to
the
express an
Minister
opinion on a policy, I think, aren't you? Deputy Gardner.
I will try to ask, so thank you for the Attorney General to confirm that there is a statutory duty of care for exposure, if I understood correctly, so there is a duty of care to expose the children to harmful content on the school premises. Have the Attorney General advised to the government on the current situation and if the guidance meeting can protect the government from the claims on exposure to the harmful content?
Attorney.
Sir, as the Deputy will know, any advice that I give to the government is confidential. I'm giving the advice to the Assembly. It would be exactly the same advice I give to the government. So I can't really go beyond that.
Supplementary?
The question is, if I didn't ask what the advice was the Attorney General had any communication with the government regarding the current guidelines and if they align with the law and statutory obligations?
He can't answer that. There's a long-standing convention that the attorney can't be asked about advice he's given to government. It applies to all members. Any advice the attorney gives to anyone in the chamber is confidential. Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. So could the Attorney General just explain whether there is any variability in terms of responsibility for duty of care across each of the different schools, and whether or not he can advise as to whether there is different degrees of harm that would be integral to that duty of care as well?
Tony.
So as I did preface my first answer to the question, questions of legal liability do always depend on specific facts. So there may well be specific facts in particular cases as to why, say, primary liability may be on one party, such as the minister, or possibly a secondary liability on a head teacher for a statutory duty. These are very fact-sensitive questions, and it's rather difficult to answer them in a vacuum beyond a general statement that, well, yes, there may be varying degrees of liability, but in terms of the policy, I've set it out, and I'm not sure that I can go much beyond that. Sorry if I've not satisfied the Deputy, but thank you.
Supplementary?
Thank you, sir. It's very interesting that it's such a controversial subject, isn't it? I just wonder if the Attorney General could give any steer as to how we might actually understand this in legal terms, so that we can actually form really good policy on this. Thank you.
So I think the best approach for the Minister and schools is to conduct risk assessments in relation to as sort of fact-based as possible in relation to practical instances that schools come across day to day, and to, having done those risk assessments, then to put in place policies and procedures which best mitigate those particular risks, to actively monitor those policies and procedures to ensure that they are observed. I think that's the best advice I can give in the circumstances.
Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. The question originally said about being on the school grounds and school site. Is that also determined by a time factor of their duty of care, as in a predetermined factor of a school day?
Attorney.
For my part, I would be reluctant to phrase it in terms of a particular time factor. I think, again, it depends on the particular facts. So if an older child perhaps may have less time in school, so it would be wrong to put a blanket time period which covers all age ranges as regards any particular duty of care. So I think it needs to be, I think the assessment will depend on particular facts, and it will, I think a policy has to take account of that degree of flexibility and not try to impose a one-size-fits-all approach to what may be a multitude of different factual situations.
Supplementary?
No, sir.
Final supplementary, Deputy Wall.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Attorney General for the answers he's been given, because it's an extremely complicated area. Does the duty of care really depend on what we call reasonable use? So if we talk about reasonable use, is reasonable use about the use of smartphones being required in schools? Are they required when a brick phone is sufficient? We have all of these different, ways in which we can avoid these areas. Shouldn't schools be looking at that and review and thinking about that? Sorry, my screen's just gone dead on me here. Sorry. Sorry. So I've lost my connection on this one. Sorry, to go back to this point of the liability, and we talk about uneven liability here, I think as described in your answer to one of the questions by the earlier deputy. Who ultimately is responsible? Is it the governors? Is it the minister? Is it the teachers? Where does this corporate responsibility lie?
Mr. Attorney.
Well, so the minister has responsibility as corporate sole, ultimate responsibility, and can be sued or sue in that capacity. So there may also be a statutory duty on head teachers under the education law in the way that I previously outlined. So those are the primary source of responsibilities, and it's up to school governors to try and assist with managing that legal risk as best they can. In terms of reasonable use, it will be up to schools to assess whether there are reasonable uses for mobile phones by pupils in the particular circumstances that the schools face, and come to a decision themselves as to whether there are reasonable uses, or whether to take a different approach. So it's not for me to frame policy for schools and the minister in this area. But I hope the answers that I've given are of assistance to the Assembly in considering what I accept is a difficult and important issue.
Thank you, Attorney. Question 12, Deputy Coles, will put to the Minister for Infrastructure. Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. And I am aware that the first part of this question has been answered in the media, but it's the second part. So, will the Minister state when the public engagement regarding the redevelopment of Fort Regent will begin, and when it is anticipated that any concept designs will be made available?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for his question. Sir, the Government will be launching a new and we believe exciting vision for the redevelopment of Fort Regent, together with a public consultation on the 2nd of April. This will include detail on potential concepts and future uses for Fort Regent. Prior to the consultation going live, we'll be briefing scrutiny, I hope, sir, on the 28th of March and all States members on the 31st of March, and we will include public meetings in April. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Yes, sir. Unfortunately, I'm going to be away for the briefing on the scrutiny panel, but that is unfortunate. The public engagement, obviously, there's concept and ideas already been floated around, but how much influence will this engagement have? If sport is not due to return to the fort, could the public persuade the Minister to get some scope for sport?
Thank you, sir. There will be an element of sport at the fort, I believe. The engagement is to find out what the public want. Clearly, we've got ideas, and we've worked up some of those ideas. I would expect to see new sports at the fort that we haven't seen on the island before, and also some exciting concepts. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. In the Minister's press release on a vision for Fort Regent, he mentions the relocation of soft play facilities, which the panel and Assembly will have noted. Will he confirm what public engagement has or will take place with regards to the provision of soft play at the waterfront?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. So the the soft play, we want to make sure that there's a continuation of service, and we need to make sure we've got a new venue for soft play whilst we operate the current soft play. So if soft play is to stay at the waterfront or move back to the Fort Region, that will be part of the consultation. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. Members of the public may have seen soft play equipment moving into the waterfront over the previous days. Will the Minister confirm why no public consultation on the form and function of that has taken place to date then?
Minister.
Sir, we believe that we need to provide soft play indoors and in St Helier, sir, and we found a location, sir, and as I said earlier in my earlier answer, we will consult as to whether soft play stays at the waterfront or returns to Fort Region. Thank you.
Deputy Joseph.
So I think everybody welcomes the Minister's publication of what he's going to be doing. We received the email yesterday on and it's a good job it's the 2nd of April rather than the 1st. I understood an announcement was going to be made on the 1st. But I wonder whether the Minister would confirm or otherwise. I know that there is some exciting discussion, which we don't know a lot about Project Breakwater and the important infrastructure that's going to be required for Jersey. Can he give us any insight into whether or not the funding for this exciting Project Breakwater is going to include Fort Regent? Because it's high time that something was done with Fort Regent, as I'm sure he wants to enthusiastically support.
Minister.
Sir, the discussions about funding are ongoing, sir, and we'll be providing more detail at the private briefings for members and when the public consultation starts. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary. Deputy Renouf.
Yes, so the statement that the Minister put out with regard to this to Fort Regent mentioned that the plans that the JDC had developed will be put out for consultation. Can he clarify whether this means that there is a plan that the government, that the JDC have already come up with and that we'll be consulting on that? Or are they consulting on asking for ideas from the public?
Minister.
So there's been lots of work, as members will know, over many, many years. So we've been working with our partners, the SOJDC, for many months around different concepts. And we want to test those concepts with the public, and that's what the consultation will be for. So I believe that the plans are exciting, but we want to hear from the public their views on what we're planning and also alternative views. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Yes, so can I ask the Minister why it wasn't considered a good idea to start with public consultation, to encourage the public to come forward with ideas and help the government shape those proposals, rather than develop proposals in a small group of people and then ask the public whether they fancy them or not?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Sir, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds have been spent on Fort Regent over many years. And so we're not starting from a blank sheet of paper, sir. We are looking at finding ways to do this as quickly as we possibly can. There's a general feeling, I believe, amongst the public that the people want the work to be carried out and for the Fort Regent to be open and for us to get back to Fort Regent that we all love. And I think, sir, we have to do that as quickly as we can. We do want to include the public's observations of the concepts that we've come up with, and we do have an open mind, sir. What we need to do is provide something that's affordable and sustainable, sir. Thank you.
Deputy Tullier.
Thank you, sir. The Minister told the media in May of 2024 that the plans would include a skate park, a children's play area, youth and other leisure facilities, and would require in excess of £80 million worth of investment. Is this statement still valid today?
Minister.
Sir, members will be aware of the struggles we've had to find a suitable location for a skate park in St Helier, sir, and I believe that the long-term solution is at Fort Regent. We've got a site there, sir, which has got a lot of space, doesn't have many neighbours, sir, so I believe skate park will be featuring there, sir. We have got the largest skate park in Britain, sir, at Le Canavet, superbly used. Hopefully we're going to have some exciting events there this year, but we do need a facility in town. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
So in 2009, I was on a scrutiny panel that looked at the issue of Fort Regent, and we found that two key factors on the decline in footfall were, first of all, the removal of the swimming pool, but also difficulties in accessibility, sir. Would the ministers confirm whether or not accessibility, i.e. perhaps a lift access from Snow Hill area to the fort with an adjoining bridge, which was suggested in 2022, might be back on the table, and if not, why not?
Minister.
So clearly, the fort was designed to keep people out, sir, originally, and so we need to find ways of getting people in. So access considerations will certainly form part of the consultation. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister confirm if providing a permanent home for the Special Gymnastics Club is part of the redevelopment plans, and what the plan is for that club when the fort closes at the end of the year? Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. So we've been in regular dialogue, and I suspect that my predecessor was also in regular dialogue, not only with the Special Gymnastics Club, but the other gymnastics clubs located at Fort Regent, sir. So we are in the process of investing £8.4 million at Oakfield, and that includes a dedicated gymnastics facility. We've been talking to the national governing body for advice, sir, on the layout of that facility, and we look forward to welcoming the 3 gymnastics clubs to Oakfield when we open in October. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Yes, sir. Have all 3 clubs agreed to that move? Thank you.
Minister.
So the move has been planned for a long time, sir, and we continue to have fortnightly meetings with those 3 clubs on how we're going to operate. And we, as I said earlier, we're taking advice and guidance from the national governing body for gymnastics. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister confirm or provide some guarantee that whatever future plans emerge for Fort Regent, that they will remain free to the public?
Minister.
Sorry, can the Deputy just confirm the end of that question?
They will remain free to the public.
Yes.
Sir, access to Fort Regent will remain free, sir, but facilities there, you'll have to pay if you want to use certain facilities, just has been the case throughout the history of the Fort Regent being open as a leisure centre, but access to the gardens, etc., will remain free. Thank you.
Supplementary?
Thank you, sir. Would the Minister give some consideration to concessions, considering that we're still in a cost of living crisis?
Minister.
So we want as many people to use the facility as possible, both locals and visitors alike, sir. The commercial aspects are still up for consideration, sir, and I'm sure any operator would, of any facility that operates at Fort Regent will be consideration of concessions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Deputy Wall.
Thank you, sir. And obviously, there's a bit of history around closing public sites down. La Folie is the prime one. And obviously, the Minister attempted to shut down Lido as well. What are the risks does the Minister believe he's potentially going to incur by closing the fort down for 3 years? And has he thought of any alternatives, or has he engaged with the Fort Regent groups to see if there is an alternative way which is not about shutting the fort down?
Sir, I thank the Deputy for his question. I'd just like to correct him. At no time have I said we should close down the Lido, sir. What I have said is we should have a lease in place with any operator that operates at the Lido, and that's something we now have, and we're currently out for a tender process. Sir, officers are in regular dialogue with those people who operate at Fort Regent. 5 years ago, there were 39 groups. Currently, there are 17 groups, and we're happy to consult with anybody. Sir, the La Folie that's mentioned has been under the control of Ports of Jersey for many, many years. One of the first things I did when I became Minister for Infrastructure was asked whether we could take back the La Folie in so we could get something done there. So lots of effort is going into Fort Regent. We need to close Fort Regent so we can do the works quickly, cheaply and safely. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary? No, thanks, sir. Donald Thompson-Saviour.
Thank you, sir. I was surprised recently, sir, to see some outline plans in principle from the Jersey Development Company with regard to replacing the existing cinemas with 2 smaller cinemas further to the west on the same site. Does the Minister not believe that this would be better suited to resite the cinemas inside Fort Regent? I mean, having spent many decades in the cinema industry, I can inform the Assembly that cinemas do not require a sea view. Does the Minister not agree?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I agree about the sea view, sir. So we want Fort Regent to be a leisure complex, and that may include cinemas. It may not include cinemas, sir, but clearly, if you've got a leisure complex, you want to have as many offerings there as possible to attract footfall, which may use more than one of those facilities. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Final supplementary, Deputy Coles.
Yes, thank you, sir. The Minister mentions that obviously SOJDC are one of the delivery partner for this project. Can the Minister confirm who has final say on the consultation and arrangements that go in there into Fort Region, please?
Minister.
Sir, the Regeneration Steering Group, sir, is overseeing the Fort Regent. It has taken longer than we would have hoped to get to this stage, sir, but we want to make sure that we're as prepared as we possibly can for that consultation. We want it to be as meaningful as possible, but it'll be the Regeneration Steering Group that will oversee any redevelopment of the Fort Regent. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Question 13, Deputy Ozef will put to the Minister for Housing. Deputy Ozef.
Will the Minister advise whether the Government has assessed the combined impact of rising interest rates, the 3% stamp duty surcharge on the buy-to-let market, and if so, what evidence there is of effects on transaction volumes, landlord participation and rental costs, and what action, if any, is being taken in response?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. There has not been a formal assessment of the combined impact of the rise of interest rates and the introduction of the 3% stamp duty surcharge. As the Fiscal Policy Panel commented in their review last year of the housing market, it would be difficult to disentangle the impact of both of these things and definitively attribute particular outcomes to particular changes. But we can observe the things that have occurred since those changes, like the fall in transactions, the drop in the proportion of investment purchases versus the rise in the proportion of first-time buyer purchases, the fall in prices overall, which last year was the biggest since records began, and the fall in advertised rents. Some of those outcomes are, of course, more desirable than others, but I believe that the policy platform that I'm working to takes into account the bigger picture, and I'm content that my priorities are the right ones for the moment that we find ourselves in.
Supplementary.
Is he saying, sir, that he as Minister hasn't got any idea of the impact of the, as he now accepts, the smaller number of buy-to-lets being purchased? And he claims that rents have gone down. That is the opposite of what, if I've misunderstood him, please forgive me. My understanding is that rents are rising because of the tightness of supply of buy-to-let property.
I believe that that is mistaken. Statistics Jersey collects data on advertised rents. That is the rents that is offered at the commencement of a tenancy, where issues of supply and demand will have the greatest influence in determining what that rent is. And they are showing that they are, not by much, but falling a little bit. That's advertised rents. Actual rents, I have no doubt, are increasing, but that's because actual rents in a multi-year tenancy are not determined by supply and demand factors. They're determined by what tenancy contracts say. And if a contract says your rent goes up once a year by RPI, it goes up irrespective of what's happening with supply and demand in the rest of the market. So that's the evidence we have before us on advertised rents. In the residential tenancy law reforms that I'm proposing, will be calling for collection of data on actual rents charged, where landlords will, as they have had to do in the past, but have no longer been required to, will be required to register what rents they are actually charging, which will get us a better picture of the actual situation there that can help inform policies in the future.
Yes, Deputy Taddeo.
So does the Minister accept that, on the one hand, he's got some members of the Assembly, presumably like the questioner, who would like to see the 3% abolished completely? He's got other members, perhaps on the left of the Assembly, who would like to see the amount increased to 5%, and we know we've got a proposition about that. Could the Minister outline why his policy is to keep it at 3% and why that he thinks that the middle road of centrist politics is perhaps appropriate at the moment in this regard?
Well, so I certainly wouldn't characterise it as the deputy did at the end of his question. So I supported the introduction of the 3% surcharge and stamp duty for investment properties. I thought that was necessary to cool down the obvious overheating that there had been in that particular part of the market. And the evidence that we can see that is collated by Statistics Jersey shows, and whether we can directly attribute it to that surcharge or to other factors in the economy, the fact is that that part of the market has cooled down. And so I think to take a measure now aimed at cooling it down further when it doesn't need to be cooled down further, but in the future, if conditions drastically changed and we might need to again in the future, but wouldn't have that option because we've done it, strikes me as bad timing. And so that's why I'm in favour of maintaining it at 3% at this point.
Supplementary. Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. Perhaps the Minister could confirm whether he's noticed that, contrary to what's suggested in this question, the interest rates are currently falling, and the volumes of transactions are gently rising, according to the latest housing survey. Does he therefore think that perhaps the best option might be to wait and see how these various factors play out in terms of the interaction between falling interest rates, rising transactions, the 3% surcharge, which was designed to correct a structural imbalance in the housing market which favoured buy-to-let investors? Would he comment on that, please?
Minister.
I agree with the assessment that Deputy Renouf has just given. I regard the period that we're in as a period of market correction because the situation that we were in just a few years ago was clearly unsustainable because prices were rising at incredible rates that were simply unsustainable and frankly terrifying for young people who were looking at the island and trying to plot what their future would be, seeing prices become more and more unaffordable. The correction that we're in now, which I am interested to see how long it will go on for and what position we'll be in a few years' time, is one that, though it poses difficulties to some people in the market, does also pose opportunities to others. And if house prices coming down and real terms earnings going up at the same time, that at least means that housing is becoming more affordable for some people. And obviously the picture is more complicated than can be summed up in one sentence like that, but housing becoming more affordable for people is a trend I'd like to celebrate.
Supplementary. Final supplementary, Deputy Joseph.
Thank you, sir. I don't want to take up any more time now because we're going to have a debate on it. I previously, and I know I haven't invited him, we've been talking in this assembly about effectively empirical information about statistics. Would he, can I restate before we have the debate about the 5%, would he join me in having a number of discussions with interested parties that are actually giving real life experience of the qualitative reasons why the arguments are worth listening to in terms of there being a paucity of buy-to-let properties, nobody wanting to buy them, and a real issue of rising rents? Would you agree with that it's important to have some up-to-date qualitative information and not just to rely upon the horse has bolted, the market's not just cooled, it's frozen out?
Minister.
Well, so again, the Deputy referred to rising rents, and the empirical data that we have on advertised rents is that they are falling. He's right, sir, that rents within tenancies are going up, but that is to do with contractual terms, and if he's seriously concerned about that, then I will very much welcome his support for the reforms I'm proposing in the residential tenancy law, which aim to address that very specific thing. But on the point he made at the start of his question, sir, I am absolutely all ears to listen to those in various parts of the market from all sides. I'm certainly up for that. I look forward to his invitation on that, and I have no doubt that we'll enjoy it. But whilst I will listen, I will also push back and put other perspectives to them to debate these issues, so we don't just take what isolated parts of the market think, and where economic players have a microeconomic perspective. My job is to have a macroeconomic perspective, so it won't just be to accept everything I'm told. There will be pushback, and but that discussion is always healthy.
Thank you, Minister. We've been going for 2 hours, and we've got through 13 questions, so members wish to reflect on whether or not they need to ask supplementary questions so that we get through more questions in the time we've got left. Question 14, Deputy Alex Curtis will put to the Minister for Treasury and Resources. Deputy Curtis.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister provide the reasoning behind the decision that it was in the public interest to approve the Andiam Homes purchase of the remainder of the Maison Les Arches development under Ministerial Decision MD-TR-2025-135 and the evidence to support that decision?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. So one of the 12 priorities contained in the 2024 Common Strategic Policy approved by this Assembly in May of last year was to provide more affordable homes for islanders. In providing approval for Andiam to acquire 26 affordable homes that would otherwise have been sold on the open market, this government continues to deliver on that strategic priority. I consider this acquisition to be clearly in the public interest. Of the 26 homes, 4 are 3-bedroom townhouses which provide a rare opportunity for family homes in the heart of St Helier. The homes come with the remaining 46 car parking spaces on the site. Finally, I would add that the acquisition also received the support of the Minister for Housing from a housing policy perspective. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. No doubt the Minister was provided with evidence, as is explained in the written response to Deputy Renniff's question. But given the site developer and owner initiated the discussions for the purchase of this site by Andiam, which is a scheduled public authority under the FOI law, will the Minister confirm why any document or evidence the Minister had to evaluate the decision were exempt from publication under Clause 33A, commercial sensitivity, when the ministerial decision was published?
Minister.
Sir, I would imagine if anything was exempt, it was on the basis of commercial sensitivity and how much Andiam would have paid for the houses, and I don't think that's anything particularly unusual. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Renniff.
Thank you, sir. I think the issue that some members are trying to get at here is to understand where the risk lies and how this has come about. The developer asked for this to be taken over, which suggests that they feel there may not be a commercial viability in this scheme. Can she reassure the Assembly that the Andiam are not simply borrowing money to take over a property development that means that their effectively risk is being transferred to their balance sheet from a private company's balance sheet?
Minister.
No, sir, I don't believe that's the case. Andiam have a demand for homes. It makes a huge amount of sense for them to take the entire development, so they can either provide those homes through social rental or through their affordable home purchase schemes. It gives them a consistent and cohesive view. If the developer may have considered they didn't want to sell the homes, I don't believe Andiam is digging anybody out of a hole. They would not have entered the transaction at anything other than a viable price that they felt worked for them and their business models. As I say, it provides an extra opportunity for more homes, and whether Andiam wants to sell them or rent them, there will be a demand for those homes either on an affordable basis or on a social rental basis, and I entirely support the decision. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Yes, so I'm not sure the question is entirely answered. I think members would welcome reassurance that their data supports the idea that these are homes that can be sold profitably by Andiam and not that the development isn't a purchase from a developer in distress who feels that there is no possibility of selling them at a profit.
Minister.
Sir, it has never been indicated to me that the developer is in any kind of distress, and I think that kind of language is really unhelpful for everybody. I also would just remind everybody that Andiam is a professional organisation. They exist to develop and let and sell homes. They are professionals. They know what they're doing. They had advice. They would have taken advice before they entered into the development agreement in the first place, and they would have considered it very carefully before buying the latest 26 homes. Government also had third-party assurance about the transaction. I really do not believe there is any risk issue with this transaction. Thank you, sir.
Final supplementary, Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. And I think the question that Deputy Renniff kind of highlighted is There is here a question of real risk. These are the accounts that are linked to the State of Jersey Group accounts. So it's really just to once more ask the Minister, given that these homes clearly were not of interest for a developer to build for the open market at 100% open market sales, what evidence did the Minister use to guarantee that sale or rent under Andim's model is truly viable?
Sir, I can only say again, we had third-party independent experts advising us on the transaction to confirm that it was a sensible transaction, and again, Andy, we're a professional organisation. There is clearly a demand, and I'm afraid if you want to know more about that demand, you will have to address those questions to the Housing Minister, because that's not a question I can answer. But I have no doubt that those houses will not be sitting empty or unloved or unwanted, and that they will not be able to be sold at not at a loss in due course. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Question 15, the Conotar of St Helier will put to the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs. Conotar.
Will the Minister advise what progress has been made on introducing the necessary technology to provide 24/7 enforcement of speed limits, and what legislative changes, if any, would be required in order for it to be deployed?
Yes. Is there an Assistant Minister? Oh, yes.
Thank you, sir. I thank the Constable of St Helier for that question. The procurement process for the safety camera has been complex, but production is now underway with parts being manufactured in Australia and America and then assembled in Southampton. The equipment is expected to be delivered in Jersey and to be ready for deployment later this year. It is important to note that the purpose of the safety cameras and the current States of Jersey Police speed detection equipment is not for 24/7 enforcement, but rather to enhance road safety and respond to specific needs. I understand that the Road Traffic Jersey law is currently drafted would allow for the operation of this new speed detection device. It is a new innovation which has proved successful in other areas. If the operational requirements require 24/7 enhancement of speed limits at some point in the future, then we will work with our colleague, the Minister for Infrastructure, to ensure that the law is sufficient to permit that activity. Thank you.
Supplementary?
Yes, thank you, sir. I'm interested that the Assistant Minister doesn't believe that 24/7 enforcement is necessary. This is surely something that a lot of islanders would not agree with, given that the island's roads are used as a speedway by a minority of drivers. And wouldn't it make sense to send out the message that we will catch you whatever time of day you choose to go at whatever it is, 50, 60 miles an hour around our island roads? Thank you, sir.
Thank you for that additional question. I think we should look at this, the success of the equipment that's been introduced before we consider 24/7 enforcement. It's targeted specifically at those drivers. I am not going into too many details about exactly how it operates, because obviously that would give a clue to some of these drivers, and they might try to avoid the detection devices. They certainly, the equipment certainly will operate late at night, and it will target those areas where we know this activity is undertaken. Thank you.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. Would the Minister advise how much of the police time the safety cameras will save?
Minister.
I'm sorry, I don't have that information. This actually isn't an area where I have delegated responsibility. I have some interest in this area, but I'm sure we can obtain that information. Thank you.
Supplementary.
Would the Minister ask officers and the Minister, well, the Assistant Minister ask the Ministers to supply this information to the Assembly, including how much time currently spent by the police for policing roads?
Assistant Minister.
I'm not sure that's actually
actually relevant to the original question. It seems to be a deviation from what was asked.
Yes, that's
and therefore, I don't think it's necessary to answer that, sir.
all right. Deputy Tadia.
Thank you, sir. I'm fascinated that there's going to be an amnesty on speeding if you commit it during certain times. And I look forward to finding out more about that. So on the 5 Mile Road this weekend, I noticed that the police were out in force both at Le Bray and at St Wands. And you could see them a mile off, probably, I'm not saying 5 miles off. And it was also helped that the local bus driver was flashing people to let them know that there was a speed trap coming up ahead, at which point I had to increase my speed from 30 to 40 so I wasn't seen to be driving too slowly and maybe get pulled over, sir. So given the fact that often people can see police checks a mile ahead, does the Minister think that it would be better to have probably mobile cameras which can be moved around so people don't always know where they're going to be, and that ultimately this will be a saving both in terms of efficiency and hopefully a sufficient deterrent as well for speeding in future?
Oh, that was a long, sir, that was a lengthy question. I thought it was a speech, but maybe I was mistaken. There's no amnesty suggested at all in anything that I said. And this particular equipment can be deployed at any time in a 24-hour period. As I've said, I don't think that we should provide details because it is an innovation. I believe it will be successful, and I think we should wait to see the results.
Supplementary. Deputy Joseph.
So, as members will be aware, I was caught speeding, and I'm very sorry. I'll be making a statement of apology to the Assembly about that. But I realise now that speeding is an issue, a greater issue than perhaps I realised previously. And I share the questioner's reason for asking this, and the constable's attempts to deal with something about it. Would he agree that drivers themselves can do something about their own speed limits? For example, having a bell in it's available on GPS systems where you can actually now, with the different speed limits across our island, it's geofenced to the different roads, and you can actually have a clear indication in your car that you're speeding, and you can be alerted to those issues. And would he agree that that's the kind of also complementary things, notwithstanding the undesirable issue of people speeding at night at speed? People can do things for themselves, helpfully.
Assistant Minister.
Thank you, sir. Yes, I think anything that can influence motorists to reduce their speed should be taken up. I think many cars actually do provide audible. You can have an audible or a message that tells you are actually speeding. Most cars, I think, would provide that anyway. But it's up to it's up to the driver whether they use it or not. And I think driver education, particularly for those people who actually have been caught speeding, should be useful. I know this is done in other jurisdictions where people have to go on a course after being prosecuted for speeding, and I think that's something that we should consider. Thank you, sir.
I'm grateful for the Constable's reply.
Conatar, final supplementary.
Thank you. So the Assistant Minister said later this year. It's quite a long way. Could he give us a bit more detail about when it will be deployed?
Yes.
I'm sorry, but I don't have an exact date. And as I say, parts for the manufacture of this have come from Australia and America and require assembly in Southampton. At this point, although I tried to obtain a date this morning, I don't have a definite date other than we can expect it to be deployed later this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Assistant Minister. Question 17, Deputy War will put to the Minister for Infrastructure. Deputy War.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister state whether the figure of £137,000 represents a maximum or minimum amount cost of maintaining Fort Regent? And if it is the latter, will he state the maximum cost as well as the average weekly footfall through the fort in 2024 compared to 25 to date, and the number of organisations currently using the fort for the same period.
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for his question. So in response to written question 77, it was stated that the forecast pre-planned maintenance cost for Fort Regent was 66,000, with an estimated reactive maintenance spend of between 70 and 80,000 pounds. These are forecast and estimated costs, and it is therefore isn't possible to state in absolute terms whether there are a minimum or a maximum spend, or what a maximum spend might be. As Fort Regent is an open public space which is freely accessible from several locations, there is not a record of footfall. There are currently 17 organisations using Fort Regent, and as I said earlier this morning, so that's down from 39 user groups 5 years ago. The majority have been found alternative locations or have chosen to locate elsewhere. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Supplementary.
Yes, sir, thank you. I'm interested to note that the footfall is not, that data is not available. I'm actually extraordinarily surprised at that fact. So what consideration has the Minister given to the health and well-being to those current users of the fort when they no longer have access to the fort?
Minister.
Sir, I'm not sure how many times I have to say this, sir, but we are investing £8.4 million in a brand new purpose-built sport facilities at Oakfield, sir. That will cater for many sports there. We also have other sites around the island, sir, and I'm working very closely with my colleague, the Education Minister, to try and open up even more sites at the local schools, sir, where we can get more and more sport played and different activities taking place. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. We now move on to the next question, which Deputy Stevenson will put to the Minister for Infrastructure.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister explain the current status of the Compton organ gifted to the people of Jersey in 1991 and installed in the Queen's Hall at Fort Regent, and advise what plans, if any, are in place to ensure its preservation and protection following the announcement that the fort will close at the end of the year?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I thank the Deputy for a question. So I can confirm that the Compton organ is currently still located in the Queen's Hall at Fort Regent. I'm aware of the years of restoration that were undertaken before the organ was moved from the old Forum Cinema and installed in the Queen's Hall in 1991. My understanding is that, regrettably, the organ has sat dormant and not been maintained for the best part of 20 years. We do recognise, however, that the organ is a special, complex and sizable instrument, and as part of the regeneration of Fort Regent, we will need to identify a suitable location or relocation for the Compton organ. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Supplementary.
Thank you, sir, and I appreciate the Minister's response there, because the Compton organ has been a part of Jersey's musical history since 1934. Would the Minister join me in thanking the islander Malcolm Lammy and his family and those others who did gift the organ to the island, and reassure them that the way the organ has been perhaps ignored and left for many years does not mean their gift is not appreciated and valued?
Minister.
So absolutely, I'd be very happy to join the Deputy in thanking that family for their significant contribution, and I recognise the importance of this instrument to the island history. So recently I attended the Steam Museum at Trinity, sir, and saw a number of fantastic examples of organs there, which the public are able to go and see. But I would like to see these instruments being played and people enjoying them. We are fully committed to preserving and protecting the organ, and this requirement is known by both Jersey Property Holdings and our partners SOJDC. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, sir. Would the Minister consider arranging for the organ to perhaps come up through the ground and start playing a tune in the event that anybody is caught speeding through the tunnel under Fort Regent?
So what a great Radio 2 link, sir, between two questions. So I think I think we'll have to leave that, sir. Perhaps the Deputy
happily,
with
very
time.
happily, it's the last question we have time for.
With time, sir, the Deputy may think of other suggestions. Thank you, sir.
So that concludes the 2 hours and 20 minutes allotted for oral questions on notice, and accordingly written responses must be provided to the outstanding questions to the greffier for distribution as soon as possible. We now move to questions without notice. And the first period of questions is for the Minister for the Environment. And the first question is from Deputy Ozer.
Thank you, sir. I have previously asked questions about the Minister's changes to the planning policies, and I was being light-hearted when I said build, baby, whatever. I know the Minister is very seized upon the issues of, whilst respecting the Bridging Island plan, making it easier for planning applications to be processed. And I wonder whether he could very briefly update members on what he's doing, because there is a clear issue with the construction industry and the associated housing market.
Yes, Minister.
Thank you, sir. And the Deputy and members will know that it is a priority of this government to reform the planning service, and included in that is speeding up applications. The Deputy will be pleased to know that we have made a significant improvement in the last 12 months, and the number of applications in the department at any one time now rolling around the 250, 260 mark, which is quite normal for the number of applications we received during the year. I'd like to feel that the Industry Partnership Board and other initiatives that we've started up in the last 12 months have been well received. I know they have, because I've had comments to that effect. The whole idea is to make the planning process less painful and, most importantly, take less time. And it's now possible to agree a planning agreement if your application is a seriously major one, so that we can have a timetable of moving forward through that process when it's known that it's going to take more than 13 weeks that it's usual for a major application to take. So I can say to the Deputy, yes, we have made significant progress. Only this week I have decided to invite back for a third time Jim McKinnon, who has done already 2 reports on the planning department and improvements that can be made. And my hope is very much that all this great improvement that the staff had put into will be recognised, and we can see independently that great progress has been made. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Supplementary.
Sir, I welcome the Minister, what he's saying. Everybody, that this public forum, people will hear what the Minister's saying. The issue about the complexity of the island plan, which you can find a reason to say yes and no, it's said, and then the calls for additional supplementary guidance is also a challenge. In relation to Five Oaks in the area of St Saviour, he said he can't do a supplementary guidance. I'd be looking into that issue of what actually that might mean. And would he agree that we can, the absence of a Five Oaks master plan doesn't necessarily mean that we can't have a holistic view with the Minister, and I've invited him to the parish hall with the constable and the other deputies. We do need to have a plan for Five Oaks, but we don't need necessarily a lengthy process of another piece of regulatory work to do it. Five Oaks is a good place to get developed, as the Minister knows with the passing of the recent application last week. Does he agree that we don't need more rules, we need enabling?
Well, sir, I can say to the Deputy, and as I've already told him, we do not need supplementary planning guidance for the Five Oaks master plan in order for schemes to come forward in that area. Certainly, it would have been my view, had all the proposed schemes in the last Bridging Island plan debate been accepted, it would have been a top priority to do a master plan for the area, given the amount of additional building that was going to occur. But when it comes to SPGs, as we've already discussed this morning, I've made some decisions about 3,000 square foot. I've also changed some wording in SPG on historic windows and doors. St Saviour's Hospital, SPG is still in the pipeline, as is Five Oaks master plan. This Assembly recently agreed to do an SPG for the west of the island, which has now leapfrogged further up. Deputy Coles has asked me to look at residential standards, and alongside that there's also St Billard's Bay. There's a number of SPGs which I wish I had more time for officers to work on. I think we have to be realistic and say that if we can get even 1 or 2 of those through between now and the election next year, I will be very grateful. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. I'll ask my oral question. Will the Minister advise what consideration, if any, is being given to reducing any of the standards in the Building Bylaws Jersey Technical Guidance Document Part 8, Access to and Use of Buildings, with a focus on making new residential dwellings less accessible to occupants?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. The building bylaws review is at an early stage. The team have made the decision to continue to use the approved documents for England as the basis for guidance. And officers have carried out a high-level comparison between that and our local guidance to highlight the differences. However, further detail of any potential changes can't be given at the specific time. But what I can say is that the drivers for our current standards remain the same as they did when we first introduced accessibility standards to dwellings in 2008, and those were at the time the ageing population and the high cost and short supply of residential care homes.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. It has come to my attention that the approved planning plans for the South Hill flats contain a number of flats whose bathrooms are significantly below the minimum standards required for bylaws, which has yet to be granted. Those are the requirements that secure accessible use of facilities for bathrooms and the showers and toilets. Will the Minister assure the Assembly that his offices will not reduce standards for our state-owned entities, and that any change needed to meet building bylaws should be done through a revised planning application?
Minister.
Sir, the Deputy raises issues which I'm absolutely not aware of at all, but I cannot at this point in time think that we would want to reduce standards for accessibility. I personally have good reason, personal reason, to know the challenges of accessibility into properties for various number of reasons, and I can't see why or understand why at this initial stage, and I say I don't know anything about the detail here, but I have to say that I would be surprised to find that somebody has submitted a planning application which has been approved, which in fact the bathrooms are not accessible to people in wheelchairs. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. Can the Minister provide an update on progress with regard to the various aspects of wind farm legislation that is intended to bring? When will he be bringing that?
Minister.
Yes, sir. And as I've said to the Assembly before, it had been my intention in the first half of this year to come to the Assembly with the legislative process which would be needed for the granting of a lease for a wind farm, identifying what standards for environmental impact assessments, for example, would be required, and those will be quite strong. The pressure on law drafting officers is meant that will fall away a little bit further to later on in the year, but I can assure members that it's still my firm intention to come back to this Assembly, not only with the legislative process, but also with a recommendation and decision from the experts who are currently advising us as to the type of wind farm we would wish or not to move forward with, and that I hope both those debates will happen before the end of this year.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir. And if the Minister recognises that there will be considerable public debate expected on the issues around, for example, how much electricity comes ashore, where transformers will be built, and therefore the earlier that he is able to give indications about these kind of major issues would enable that public debate to happen and happen in advance of those debates and not slow up the progress when the legislation is produced. So can I ask whether he will work very assiduously to put into the public domain as early as possible the kind of information that would enable a public debate to happen on those kind of key issues?
Minister.
So I can only agree with the Deputy. When he was stood in my position and I was in his, I encouraged him greatly, and I do the same. I take his encouragement on board. I will want to put as much information into the public domain as early as I possibly can. I have been absolutely firm with officers that I do not want these debates rolling over into 2026. That would be far too close to the election, and I want the main debate on how we move forward, or if we move forward, I should say, because the decision has not been taken. Does the electricity, if we build this wind farm, land in Jersey and France, Jersey and the UK, UK and France, or any combination of those? I'm really keen to get as much of that debate going as possible. It will be a large debate. A lot of people will have a lot of different opinions as to how we move forward. I know the public are generally encouraged by moving this project forward, but I think it's really incumbent upon us to listen to everybody and to consider every alternative. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Deputy Ayer.
Thank you, sir. What action has the Minister taken to address the impending problem of disposing of EV car batteries, and does he intend to have them recycled? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. And like all new type of technology, I accept that electric cars have been around for a while now, but the number, and thanks to our incentive scheme, the number of electric vehicles on the road has increased greatly in the last 18 months. And what happens to the batteries in those vehicles is a subject which we have discussed recently. We're talking to car recycling companies down at La Collette. We're working very hard to try to make sure we can get these batteries off island. We've asked manufacturers how many vehicles we've asked dealers in Jersey how many vehicles are sitting on their premises that need to be disposed of where they have got electric batteries. And we're also speaking to manufacturers in the UK where I believe there is a scheme that recycles them. When you buy the vehicle, there is a part of that agreement which sends the vehicle back to the manufacturers when they get to the end of their useful life. So all these things are being taken into account. Obviously, electric vehicles travel on ferries when you go on holiday or you go away and take your vehicle away, but the transportation of a lot of electric vehicle batteries in one place at one time, even if they are at the end of their useful life, does pose some challenges for transporting. And I have recently started a number of discussions in the regard of what the deputies asked me about, sir.
Supplementary. Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister advise us when on the timetable for the work to start on the West of Ireland Master Plan?
Minister.
Sir, I have to advise the Deputy that I can't give her a timetable for the West of Ireland Master Plan at this time. I will speak to my policy officers and see if I can't get some rough indication, and I will email her or speak to her with the answer, sir.
Supplementary. Deputy Taddeo.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister give the Assembly an idea of when the appeal for the new Dunes development in St Brellard's is likely to be concluded?
Minister.
All I can say on the appeal decision for New Dunes at St Brellard's is that the moment I have the final documentation in front of me from the inspector, I will make the decision as soon as I can. More than that, I can't give any information at this point in time, sir.
Supplementary.
Can the Minister say more generally how long these types of appeal, on average, take in his experience?
Minister.
I can't, sir, and the reason for that is that when an application is put to appeal, it goes independently of the Planning Department, Regulation Department, it goes to the Judicial Greffier, and it's the Judicial Greffe that oversee the appeal. As Minister, I would deliberately stand away from any application during initial stages purely because it's always the possibility that any application could arrive on my desk as an appeal recommendation after it's been considered by an independent planning inspector. So I have no concept of when decisions that come to me for an appeal decision have been first put into the appeal system and the previous time that's taken. But I am aware, obviously, at some point when I get to take some of these decisions, that it has taken, in many cases, many months, and in some cases, years to get to a final determination. The last thing I would say to the Deputy is everybody in the Planning Department, be that officers, be that the Planning Committee, or be that myself and my Assistant Minister, anybody who's responsible for taking planning decisions has been charged with making those decisions properly and accurately, but as quickly as they possibly can, so to try to speed up the process of planning applications. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. In June last year, following high readings of E. coli in the seawater at Greve de Lec, the Minister said he would consider introducing year-round seawater testing, given the increase in year-round swimming. Could the Minister update the Assembly on that work, please?
Minister.
So I did say that I would consider year-round testing, and I have done that, and I've taken advice from officers, and I can say to the Deputy that we will not be starting 12-month-of-the-year testing. There's a number of reasons for that, but the main reason is that the advice is still consistent, and the advice is that after periods of heavy rainfall, the advice would not be swimming in the sea, because what happens during periods of very heavy rainfall, obviously contamination like happened at Greve de Lec back at that time, sea water can become contaminated to a certain level. And I felt that it wasn't right that we spent money testing seawater all year round when it was every possibility that it may well fall that the test happened immediately after heavy rain, and we get quite a lot of heavy rain during the winter. So the advice is, yes, please carry on swimming in the sea, but please be very conscious, especially in winter when ground is waterlogged and runoff ends up in the sea very, very easily, that you might just want to be a bit more careful where you swim after a large storm where we've had an inch or 2 inches of rain.
Thank you. That concludes that with the questions for the Minister. We now move on to questions for the Minister for External Relations. And the first question comes from Deputy Ozen.
Thank you, sir. The Minister said in the wake of the Moneyval assessment that he would be undertaking a review and updating the Assembly and sending us the terms of reference of the review from that. Could he update us as to what work is going on following the Moneyval review, which is international standards, which hopefully we'll be talking about later, sir?
Minister.
Yes, sir. As I advised when scrutiny asked me, and I'm mindful that maybe I need to advise the Assembly and do a briefing for States members, the direct review has been subsumed within a 4 strands piece of work around competitiveness. The first is looking at an international tax strategy, which, of course, members will appreciate is particularly relevant in light of what's happening with the OECD work. Secondly, is a piece of work which is looking at some of those issues. So one of them, as I've announced, is a review of an appeals process for enforcement. Another is a customer service review with the regulator. Other is looking at new products, so that's subsuming a whole piece of work there. Thirdly is the use of an international consultant to look at future value pools, so medium and longer term competitiveness, which will feed into the work that JFL is doing. And then fourthly is a piece of work which will bring together experts in the area of financial services, which will look at all of those pieces of work together and give us a new regulatory posture as well, and look at where Jersey should be positioning itself into the future. So I'm mindful that the Deputy is absolutely right, and I commit to briefing States members in more detail. It won't be this week or next, but it will be the beginning of April, sir.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir, and I welcome the Minister's response, and particularly given the recent indications about the economic confidence of Jersey. The financial services industry was distinct in actually showing the only bit of the economy which is showing growth prospects. And so is he satisfied that he's doing enough in order to maximise the growth that's absolutely going to be required when the rest of the economy seems to be completely on its knees?
Minister.
So are we doing enough is a good question, and I'm not sure it's an easy one to answer, and I'll say why. But I'll also just point to, he will have seen the PwC piece of work which showed there was far greater confidence amongst CEOs than perhaps the IOD work, which looked right across the economy. And so even in the IOD work, the financial services people who were involved in that questionnaire were more confident than the rest of the economy. I am extremely confident. He and I think, absolutely agree. In times of geopolitical uncertainty, investors are looking for certainty. They are looking for stability. And this is the reason we've divided up the competitiveness work in the way that we have. Our basic fundamental tax neutrality and tax certainty has never been more important today than it's ever been in all of our history. And one or two ministers have been a little political off the ministerial handbook this morning, so I might be the same, sir. I am absolutely committed to tax neutrality. We should not and we cannot change 010. We should not be changing our social security contributions. We should not be changing GST. This is just one of the bases. This is just one of the bases that is critically important. But if we maintain those bases, I believe we can be absolutely confident about financial services in Jersey.
Colin Tyler, St Martin.
Thank you, sir. This year, as we all know, marks the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Jersey. Islanders were starving, and the arrival of the food parcels gifted by the Canadian Red Cross literally saved lives. Canada's sovereignty is under genuine threat from the USA. If there was ever a good time to show friendship and solidarity with our fellow members of the Commonwealth, now is the time. Therefore, has the Minister, on behalf of Jersey, congratulated Mark Carney on becoming Canada's new Prime Minister, and in this historic anniversary year, reiterated the island's thanks to Canada? Thank you.
Minister.
So the Constable touches on a number of extremely important points. Jersey is proud of its membership of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association and has long argued for a sub-sovereign section of the Commonwealth wider families more broadly. That's not yet happened. We're also part of the Commonwealth Investment Board. That's something that the former questioner was instrumental in getting us involved with, and that's proved very successful as well. Of course, it's not my direct job to write to the new Prime Minister of Canada. It is the gentleman sitting just in front of me, and he has already written with his warmest congratulations. The other point I'd just make, which is a bit more political, all sorts of things are being said in Washington. It's important for us to be cautious, to listen, but to see what the actual action is.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir, and I'm glad that the Chief Minister has written to Canada, and I hope that he also offers thanks to Canada. And with all due respect to the Minister, lots of things are being said in Washington, but they are real threats, and fascism seems to be on the rise even in the Oval Office. So I have relatives and friends in Canada, so I follow the Canadian news and I get told what's happening, and it's something that we should take as a really severe threat. Thank you, sir.
Do you have a question there?
Does he agree? Sorry.
Well, I don't think Jersey ministers are responding to every comment or press media release that's issued from Washington. Firstly, I don't think we've got the time when one considers the length of them. Those directly involved will have a better handle on the seriousness of the threat, but it seems to me that Canada has a strong and proud history as a sovereign state, and that will continue.
Deputy Brenner.
Yes, sir. Continuing on the theme of period of instability in global relations, there have been increasing worries in some jurisdictions, such as Sweden and elsewhere, that over-reliance on digital payments is a key vulnerability given the potential for disrupting digital payments, and that cash is crucial in providing a resilience. Can he say whether he has given thought to maintaining the importance of cash in Jersey in terms of our security and resilience?
Minister.
So the Deputy will know that the scrutiny panel that scrutinises myself and the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development and also for international development has just completed a report into the use of cash in Jersey society. Myself and Deputy Morell are due to respond, I think it's by the end of today. I've not yet completed the review of that response, but for my part, cash remains an important choice for islanders.
Supplementary. Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. The Statistics Jersey have recently published the gender pay gap, and it was noted that within the finance and legal activity sector, they're the highest paying sector and have one of the largest gender pay gaps in Jersey, indeed rising to 65% for those people aged 55 to 59. In his capacity with responsibility for financial services, has the Minister had any discussions with the sector about mechanisms to close that gap?
Minister.
The Deputy is right that the gender pay gap review was recently published by Statistics Jersey, and that the financial and legal services was not at the top, was in, I think, the top 3 for the widest gap. That gap, as I understand it, has been reducing since January 22. I'm not one of those ministers that believes in legislating to close the gender pay gap, but I do very much support the work of the current chair and of IOD and the group which I've, the name of which is just escaped me. Mind the Gap, which are doing excellent work, and they have my full support to continue doing that work. And I hope that all members of our business community, particularly those where the gap is the greatest, are mindful of that work and proactively and positively engage with it.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. Is the Minister concerned that this may affect our international reputation as a fair and well-run jurisdiction?
Minister.
I think whilst we have programmes such as Mind the Gap and the work undertaken by the IOD and progress is being made, then I'm not.
Conor Umbrella.
Thank you, sir. Last month in the House of Lords, it was alleged that Jersey was the point at which all banana imports were channelled into the UK for obviously taxation reasons. What would be the Minister's response to this, and does he consider it affects our international image in any way? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
So just as I said that we shouldn't pay too much notice, but we should sit and listen to some of the conversations coming out of Washington. Perhaps I could say the same about some of the conversations that the members of the House of Lords have over in the United Kingdom. Some of them are historic, some of them are misinformed, and we at all times seek to correct that misinformation. Sometimes minds are not as open to the facts as we would wish them to be.
Supplementary.
I thank the Minister, sir.
Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister tell us, in the wider geopolitical context, are there any jurisdictions where he sees relationships changing or will change for the worse, and the reason for this?
Minister.
That's another good question, which is rather difficult to answer because we don't know what the future holds. We know that a trade war is detrimental to all islanders' interests in that cost of goods and cost of living will increase. but it's not necessarily that such a trade war is detrimental to our financial services, because they are outside of those sorts of tariffs. But we know also, if we look at in the US, some of the executive orders are pointing directly at a European-style VAT. We, of course, again, don't have that. All of this is creating a differentiation. What's important for us in times of instability is to ensure that that differentiation is understood. We want to continue doing business investing in global investors' money into Europe in an appropriate, responsible and efficient way. We want to continue to support our American companies who have a potential to grow and use Jersey even more, as well as in the private wealth sector. We want to provide stability for those investors in the Middle East who are looking for long-term planning and want stable environments. So providing we can navigate all of these things and not necessarily get drawn into arguments which are not in Jersey's citizens' best interests, I think that we can navigate it well. But will we see some of our trading partners' relationships deteriorate over the next number of months and years? We probably will. It's important that we, though, continue to put what we think is in Jersey's best interest first and foremost, and to continue to play to our strengths.
Supplementary?
Thank you, sir. Thank you to the Minister for his response on that. Can he give us some indication as to whether there are one or two jurisdictions where the risks around those trading relationships are more prominent than perhaps others?
Minister, you've got a few seconds left before your time expires.
I certainly can't do it in a few seconds, but it's important that we stick together as a jurisdiction, that we recognise where the risks are. Sometimes it's about stop bickering with each other, focus on our own citizens and our own economy, focus on delivering economic growth for benefits of all citizens, because that is the thing that will help in Jersey with the cost of living and with some of those greater pressures that we see elsewhere in the world.
That completes the questions for the Minister for External Relations. We now have questions for the Chief Minister, and the first question is from Deputy Reddiff.
So, yes, the Chief Minister has said he is championing deregulation in planning and championing economic growth. We've heard how his Environment Minister has followed this agenda and allowed high net worth individuals via the High Value Residency Engagement Officer to effectively change planning guidance without any public input. How much confidence does the Chief Minister think people will have in his deregulation and growth agenda if this is what it looks like in practice?
Chief Minister.
I hope people will welcome sensible changes in planning regulation. It is inaccurate to say that this was changed on the back of 3 high net worth individuals requesting it. That is simply not correct. The Environment Minister explained clearly his rationale on changing the policy, sir, which if I remember correctly, sir, when it was introduced, there was no clear rationale for introducing it at that stage. We are trying to get people building again, sir, and removing restrictions, I think, is important to help the Planning and Environment Minister to continue with the improvements he's making in the department.
Supplementary?
So as the Minister who introduced the guidance, I can say there was a rationale, and it's clearly explained in the Minister's own report. It was to encourage the building of a larger number of houses as opposed to a small number of very large houses. And I would submit that that is still a relevant objective today. So the issue I wanted to focus on here is about consultation. There has been no consultation before that change, which was made by the Minister without even telling people that a change was underway. But we have major health reforms, the biggest health reforms in a generation, that have also not been gone out to public consultation. Can the Chief Minister explain why his government seems to be so allergic to consulting on these kind of issues?
Chief Minister.
I support public consultation wholeheartedly where it is necessary in relation to health. The Deputy and members will remember the huge amount of public consultation we have been through over the various stages of the hospital project. I think when we're building and delivering facilities that the public will use, that's wholly appropriate that we engage in public consultation. When it comes to restructuring medical staffing structures, sir, that require a certain expertise, it's appropriate that the Health Minister, as he did, consults with the stakeholders. We're going to go to public consultation on Fort Regent. It's not necessary to go to public consultation on moving a soft play area down the road, sir. So we're trying to create a balance, we're trying to get things done, and we're trying to make sure our consultation is targeted and appropriate.
Deputy War.
Thank you, sir. Given that the Attorney-General recognised that schools need to assess reasonable use for smartphones or to take a different approach, what is the case for smartphones to be required on school sites? Smartphone harm to children is receiving increasing publicity, support, and so why is more preventative action not being taken with immediate effect?
Chief Minister.
Is the Deputy relating to action in school, sir? I believe he is, in which case, sir, I think this has been explained previously by the Minister for Education. The majority of schools, sir, do not allow use of smartphones during school hours, and that's a position I actually support. So the Education Minister has been pragmatic and allows the individual schools to manage those particular policies. There is a separate piece of work being led by the Assistant Minister at Sustainable Economic Development, which is looking at further regulation aimed at safeguarding especially young people with access to that, and legislation is being planned.
I see it's 12:45, and under standing orders, I shall ask you if you wish to carry on or adjourn till 2:15.
How many more minutes have we got for...
We'll carry on, do you?
How many more minutes have we got for Chief Minister?
About 10.
Propose the adjournment, sir.
Adjournment proposed. Members wish to adjourn now? Oh. Well, all right, then we'll have a very quick...
Call for the appel, please, sir.
Call for the appel. Pour to adjourn, Conch to carry on. Well, it might be voting. I'll ask the graphic to open voting. Pour to adjourn, Conch to carry on. All members have had the opportunity of voting. I ask the greffier to close the voting. And we carry on. Pour 8 votes, Conch 26. Deputy War, your supplementary.
I'm fine, thank you, sir.
Sorry, Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. Now that we've reached the month of March, it is pleasing to see that the business plans for this year have finally been published for all departments, so I congratulate the Minister on achieving that. Could he please explain why the Cabinet Office service performance measures do not include the delivery of the legislation and policy objectives of the ministers that the office serves?
Chief Minister.
Also, the legislative, as I understand, the legislative programme, which has been prioritised, is set out in an appendix to the business plan, and that most legislation, law drafting, is aligned firstly with the CSP that was approved by this Assembly, and also, sir, it's a continuous process as other requests for legislative law drafting, sir, comes forward. We considered that at the time, as we're doing with various pieces of prioritised ministerial legislation at the moment.
Supplementary. Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. Would the Chief Minister update an Assembly where we are at with the opening Opera House? Do we have a date when the islanders can start and enjoy performances at the Opera House?
Chief Minister.
I sincerely hope that is as soon as possible, but I'm going to have to defer to the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development to see if he's any closer to getting dates on that. I know he's had productive talks with stakeholders, not least the board of the Jersey Opera House, so I'm optimistic we're going to see some action there really soon.
Would the Chief Minister consider that the opening Opera House become an island-wide topic, and it's not just rely with the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development, would require leadership of the Chief Minister, and if Chief Minister can assure that the Sustainable Economic Development Minister have full support and the islanders will see Opera House opening as soon as possible.
Yes, sir, I do agree with that. Yes, Economic Development Minister will know I have been fairly forthright with my requests for the Opera House to open. It should be open. It's not right that it is not open. It is not appropriate that the management of the Opera House have not opened it. And it's a situation that must be resolved as soon as possible. And I've asked the Sustainable Economic Development Minister and his team to give that their utmost attention, and he has my full support.
Thank you, sir. Would the Minister outline to members what the arrangements are in terms of island resilience, particularly in the light of machinations in the United States at the moment?
Chief Minister.
Well, sir, that, as the Connotab will know from his former experience, the resilience of the island is an ongoing programme that our agencies and our emergency service are constantly reviewing and updating. We've been doing a lot more of that specifically since COVID, sir, and the Emergencies Council receives regular updates on that. Without going into too much detail, I'm happy to provide briefings for members. That might be an idea later in the year, actually, as we haven't done one yet in this term, but I would assure members we are well prepared for, I would say, most, if not all, eventualities, and it's work that's continuously monitored, sir. I'd like to reassure members we are in relatively good shape. Of course, we are focusing quite heavily at the moment on the transfer of the ferry service, because, of course, the importation of freight is right at the top of our list, so that's where our focus currently lies, sir. Having said that, we are mindful of geopolitical challenges, sir, and we will keep members updated.
Supplementary.
I thank the Minister and look forward to receiving the briefing in due course. Thank you, sir.
Right, Sir Martin.
Thank you, sir. Tragically, Molly Russell was only 14 years old when she took her own life after viewing content encouraging self-harm and suicide on social media. Last week, her father Ian wrote to the Prime Minister criticising the government for going backwards with its online safety bill. Currently, Jersey doesn't even have an online safety law. Will the Chief Minister confirm how his government intends to protect children from big tech and the harm it brings, and confirm when Jersey will have its own online safety bill or law? Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Connotab for raising that most important issue. The Minister for Sustainable Economic Development, in a piece of work led by the Assistant Minister, Deputy Scott, is advancing legislative changes to Jersey's data protection law to protect children from online harms, and work is underway, and we have agreed to give that legislative prioritisation when it comes forward.
Supplementary.
No, thank you, sir.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. The Chief Minister just said he didn't see a point in consulting on soft play facilities. Is he aware the budget for soft play at the waterfront is 1.5 million for the relocation? And does he not think consulting on plans to install soft play in a building that our own companies own for 1.5 million deserves at least a little consultation?
Chief Minister.
So we have to get on with things. We have finally got Fort Regent on the starting blocks, and I'm looking forward with the Minister for Infrastructure and other members of the government in sharing those plans with members and the public on the run up to the 2nd of April. So, and those new Fort Regent plans contain exciting opportunities, not only for new soft play, but an enhancement of that for children and young adults, and maybe adults, so I'm not entirely sure yet, but it is very exciting. We do not, I think, need to consult with the public on moving one soft play area from Fort Regent down to the waterfront. What are we going to ask them? the diameter of the soft play balls is adequate. I think we just need sometimes, I'm sorry, I'm not making light of this, sometimes we just need to get on with things.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir, and I agree we do have to deliver. But does the Minister therefore have the knowledge whether this soft play facility will have any facility for providing parties for those who typically have used the fort and the wider facilities around soft play in the new facility? And if not, is that not a slight cause for concern?
Chief Minister.
Well, sir, I do have confidence in the work that's been done. I'm not aware of that level of detail, but I have been reassured by SOJDC that the facility that the soft play area is going into is an improvement on the facilities at Fort Regent and will offer a more than adequate play facility for young people. So I'm pretty sure they will be able to hold parties, but I'm quite happy to find that piece of information out there. But like I say, we are going to have, we're going to get off the blocks with some exciting plans for Fort Regent, sir. And it's important in the meantime that that well-used facility is kept open to the public, and that's entirely the aim of the move to the temporary move to the waterfront.
Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Could the Chief Minister give us an update on the gas safety issues in the island, please?
Chief Minister.
I can, sir, actually, and there was a helpful question from Deputy Ozef, a written question, which has been published, sir, which sets out the specific steps we have taken and the further steps we are taking. Could I refer the Deputy to that? And if she has any further questions, please come back. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Since 2018, we have had 5 people in the CEO role. It costs $95,000 to recruit the current interim. When will the Chief Minister begin the process of recruitment for a permanent CEO?
Chief Minister.
Well, as the Deputy, so the current Chief Executive has agreed to a contract extension to the end of 2026. I very much hope that the current Chief Executive will, in the fullness of time, become the permanent Chief Executive, sir, and that's what we are going to work towards.
Supplementary. Deputy Stevenson, there's time for a short question from you, I think. You're next on the list.
Thank you, sir. At least 3 Year 5 classes have debated mobile phone use among children in this Assembly in recent weeks. What is the Chief Minister's government doing to show leadership in this area and to protect children against the challenges of mobile phone use?
Chief Minister.
So I refer the Deputy to my 2 previous answers in relation to the policy of control of mobile phones in schools and the work that Deputy Scott is leading on and providing legislation to safeguard children, sir, from harmful use.
That completes the period allotted for questions without notice to the Chief Minister. Is the adjournment proposed?
Proposed adjournment, sir.
Members content to adjourn? We'll adjourn until 2:15.